Welcome to the Milford Board of Selectmen meeting, May 8th, 2017. We have a full agenda today and a lot of folks in the audience, but prior to beginning the meeting, I would just like to acknowledge the passing of one of Milford's native sons, Nicholas Julian Sr. He served on the Finance Committee for many, many years, and many years as chairman. I attended his services today, and it was quite an honor. And he's a great guy, and it's a wonderful family. So if it's okay, I'd just like to take a moment. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is the signing of the warrant.
I'll move to approve the warrant.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous. Approval of the April 24th and April 25th minutes. We can have a motion for the April 24th.
I'll move.
Second.
I'm going to abstain. I was absent. So that's 2 in favor and 1 abstention. And the April 25th, if we can have a motion for those minutes.
I'll move to, we approve.
I'll second it, please.
I will abstain. So that's 2 in favor and 1 abstention. Okay, we'll move on to invitation to speak. Is there anyone here to speak who is not on the agenda? Amy Leone?
Sure. Bring the mic.
If you'll just identify yourself for the record. even
Okay.
though-
I'm Amy Leone. I am a business owner here in Milford. I have been working in the community for the last 11 years regarding substance abuse and prevention. I'm a mental health counselor. And I just wanted to come and speak because a lot of our efforts that we've done over the last 10 years, and especially now working with the police department and the regional substance prevention program, or the regional substance navigation program, helping those who are addicted and their families get resources. After seeing the article in the paper in regards to the commercial sale of marijuana, it kind of hit me in a little bit of a way that it seemed to me so contradicting to what we are doing as a community and what the past 11 years of all the collaboration that we have done to really look at prevention, treatment, and really to be proactive with what's happening. And I know that there's many different avenues to that law that's come out, and how, to opt out of the commercial sale and, how it has to be a voters and then the bylaws and things like that. But really looking at just right now to educate more people in the community on what the difference of the marijuana today's sale is or what it is compared to what it was back in the 70s. And we are working, we just came from a meeting with the Board of Health to really look at the collaboration with the Wellness Committee and the school and JAG and our efforts and the Board of Health to bring that awareness to the community. And we're going to be looking to start a task force to kind of campaign to just awareness of what it is that is out there. And, I was talking to somebody today and, kind of asked them the question of, what about marijuana? And, I work with a good number of, people who are addicted to opiates and heroin. And, they said to me, if you asked 1,000 heroin addicts if they ever thought that if they ever started with heroin, they didn't. They started with marijuana or alcohol. And eventually it led to that point. And, we're working so hard to bring that awareness and to bring those resources that I just don't want to see something like this impact everything that we've already done. So I just wanted to come and talk about that.
Very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy. Mr. Treadle?
Steve Treadle, Ferguson Street. Just a Milford citizen and a registered voter. I'm here because I saw you had consideration of a referendum on your agenda. I believe that involves holding a special election for Milford voters to decide whether Milford should issue permits for businesses to sell marijuana for recreational use. Is that correct?
Yes, it is
Yeah,
on the agenda.
Okay. I commend you for taking up that discussion, and I want to encourage the board to hold that election, and this is why. Last year, the voters of Massachusetts decided to legalize recreational use of marijuana by approving a ballot question. And I think what many voters are not aware of is that question also provided that each town or city could hold a referendum for their citizens to decide whether they wanted stores distributing marijuana in their town. I encourage you to give our citizens the chance to decide for themselves. Finally, I hope it's clear to Milford residents that the special election does not in any way limit citizens from using marijuana or growing it themselves. It only speaks to whether or not retail sales can receive a permit to sell the products in town.
Absolutely.
That's my statement.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Anyone else, sir?
This one?
Sure.
Hi. My name is Brian Cole. My wife and I live on Edgewood Drive. I want to also talk about the proposed referendum on recreational marijuana sales. It's true that only a few hundred votes separated approval from disapproval in the town, but it's also true that 3/4 of the town turned out to vote in that election. Compare that to our voting record in town elections over the past decade, well, since 2010 anyway, and only once has any town election even topped 1/4 for voter participation. So my concern is if we hold a special election with one or very few items on the ballot, turnout is going to be very low, and a small fraction of the registered voters are going to decide whether or not we allow recreational marijuana sales in this town. This is exactly what happened in Westboro a couple weeks ago with their special election, right? Almost 10,000 people voted in the statewide referendum, but just over 1,000 people voted on the townwide referendum that banned pot shops in town. So I would suggest to the board, if this is possible, that we add some sort of caveat to the referendum saying that the results only become binding if a certain percentage of voters, like 50%, participate in the referendum. That way, whatever the decision, we can be sure that it's something the town of Milford actually supports. Thank you for
Thank you.
your time.
Thank you, Brian. Amy?
Hi,
Hi there.
Amy Sanborn, 10 Virginia Drive in Milford. I'll make it short and sweet. I support the Board of Selectmen's recommendation of having a referendum to decide whether retail sales of marijuana would be allowed in Milford. However, if the referendum decides to support retail sales, I do not think the shop should be allowed in highly trafficked areas. They should be restricted as much as medical sales.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Beverly Swimer. I live in 4 Jones Circle. I would like to take this opportunity to voice my support for the selectmen's intention to possibly develop a referendum to ban the sale of retail marijuana in our town. Let me be clear. I have no objection to the well-regulated sale of medical marijuana and support its role in the compassionate care of those people who are seriously ill. However, in my opinion, the sale of recreational marijuana is a very different type of sale than medical marijuana. If we were to institute such a ban, as the list of towns who have already taken the initiative to ban the retail of marijuana continues to grow, a ban on retail marijuana in our town would prevent Milford from becoming, by default, the pot shop destination of the area for residents not only in our surrounding towns, but also due to Milford's quick, easy access on and off of major highways like 495. It opens our town to many people outside the immediate area whose towns have rejected retail sales in their community. Certainly, this will impact our image as a town for families and children and a safe community. Such a ban would protect our children from unnecessary, unexpected exposure, such as the recent incident that we've all heard on the news of children getting sick unexpectedly from brownies they ate. This incident alone should cause us all to pause and consider the far-reaching impact such liberal access to marijuana would have on the character, culture, and image of our community. As across the nation, and as Amy has explained, our country, our community is fighting its own significant battle against drug addiction on a daily basis. Will the liberal access to retail marijuana in our town have potential to contribute to this problem? And finally, on the horizon is the possibility of that long-awaited revitalization of our downtown. Has been under discussion for a long time. And now we're on the brink of possibly that happening. How will we attract viable businesses to our downtown when the downtown, according to the planning board, will be surrounded or have the potential to be surrounded by retail shops and people will have access to marijuana there? I think we really have to give deep thought and due consideration to how it impacts the health and well-being of our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Swimer.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to voice their opinion? Okay, if not, we'll go to our first public hearings and scheduled appointments. Attorney Ernest Pettinari.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Ernie.
I'm Ernie Pettinari. My law office is located at 12 Main Street here in Milford. Over the last 15 years, many of you folks, at least Mr. Buckley and others in the room, have worked on this project that we've been involved with, attempting to bring some life to this piece of property that's located on Deer Street in Milford. Last month, in the month of April, following an overwhelming vote of support by the town meeting, we procured a special permit which would begin the development processes that would be attendant to the creation of this business park subdivision. You might remember this was the subject of several different town meeting articles over the last 15 years. You also might remember that in the last 6 months, it has been proposed and has been approved by the planning board that Restaurant Depot, a nationally known company, would come into the area and build a several 100,000 square foot location for their wholesale use in that business park. Total development costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 million. You also might remember, and I think, Bill, you remember, we have had conversations with the selectmen before about the traffic controls, the improvements to infrastructure, et cetera, that would be attendant to the development of the property that is located in that Route 85 thoroughfare. In April, we got the approval of the planning board to do the Restaurant Depot lot. We also got the site plan approved. And now we're here to tell you that in the next several months, we're actually ready to start work. We have to do work on Deer Street. We've all lived in this town a very long time. I didn't know where Deer Street is. Deer Street's a paper street, and it's been there since the Civil War. What we need is we need your board to take recognition of its role in the administrative body which governs the access to and the control of public ways in the town, and authorize us to complete the development per the special permit and per the site plan that was done. And we're here tonight to bring you up to date on all of those local approvals and to simply work as we usually do, hand in glove with the administrative bodies of the community, and let you know what we're doing and let you know the role you play. At the end of what we're going to present to you tonight, we're going to ask that you take a vote authorizing the development of Deer Street through the Gutierrez Companies and Ed Scioli. Some of you might remember Ed. Ed's been on this project for a number of years. And Chris Novak from VHB, who's also been before you before. And we're here tonight to answer any questions you have, but most importantly, we're here to tell you that we are ready to develop this property, and in order to so do, we need your permission and your approval. Very briefly, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll let Chris just give you an idea of what's going in there and how, and then at the end of his presentation, if there's questions, we're ready to answer them.
Great.
Hi, as Ernie said, I'm Chris Novak from VHB, site civil engineer. I've been working on this project since 2001. So it has a long history.
Came to it late.
Yeah, I wasn't the first person at VHB to work on it. But, so Ernie told me with the long history to keep it high level and short. Feel free to interrupt me at any time.
Thank you.
And stop me if you want some more detail. The site is approximately 80 acres. It was formerly planned for 625,000 square feet. What you see before you, that's of office space. This is the updated master plan, which shows 545,000 square feet of office space and a 63,000 square foot restaurant depot facility located on what we call, it was formerly the Building 4 site, or Parcel 1, but it's located, it's the first site as you enter off of Cedar Street, Deer Street. So I have another graphic that I'll show you in a second, but the site borders 495, and north is to the end of the page, so that's on the west side. Deer Brook is located on the east side of the site, Wildcat Pond, Charles River. As I mentioned before, Cedar Street is located on the southern end of the site. There are a number of wetlands located on the site. There's some rare species habitat. There's some other things that have led to the long permitting history of this site. We've received several permits to date from the town of Milford. We've rezoned the property twice. We've subdivided the property. We have 2 wetlands order of conditions. We have site plan approval. We have a special permit for the restaurant depot site, and we have a sewer extension permit. In addition, we've received several permits from the state of Massachusetts. We've gone through MEPA review. We have a 401 water quality permit. We have a sewer extension from the DEP. We have a conservation management permit with natural heritage. We've been through Mass Historic Commission, and we currently have a structural adequacy review for the Charles River Crossing in process with Mass DOT. In addition, we'll be filing a access permit with Mass DOT shortly. On the federal level, we've received a 404 Category 2 permit, individual permit for the site that deals with cultural resources as well as the wetland impacts. We also will be filing for a NIPD's construction general permit, which is just a construction permit. So all that is taking some time. As Ernie mentioned, our purpose here tonight is to ask for permission to do the work within Deer Street. I've prepared a graphic here just to orient everybody as far as where Deer Street starts and stops, and just to familiarize everybody with some of the past history. What's shown in red is the Cedar Street right-of-way. What's shown in yellow is what we refer to as Deer Street. What's shown in green is a permanent access easement that we received, that we worked to get several years ago, which would allow for the realignment of the intersection with Cedar Street and provide a safer geometry. What's shown in blue is a second paper street, Old Town Road, which we have no plans to improve at this time. And then what's shown in purple is the actual subdivision road, which is referred to as the Deer Street extension. Deer Street is approximately 1,100 feet long. That's the portion that we'll be improving. The purple Deer Street extension is approximately 700 feet. And the goal is, when all of that's done, it would be public access. So, also wanted to give you a little update on the original, or some history on the original design, and then an update on where we are today. As I previously mentioned, the improvements within Deer Street, or, within Deer Street up to Old Town Road, that's going to be, it's going to be fully improved with a sidewalk on one side of the road. On the original design in 2006, there was a 48-foot span over the Charles River with a slight skew in the abutments. We had a stormwater mitigation area, which was an infiltration basin. We had a wetland replication area in the plan. We had the 700 linear foot Deer Street extension with a second structural crossing over an intermittent stream. And then we had utilities and other improvements that you would typically see within a subdivision road. Over the years, the work within that right-of-way has changed very little. This is today's design. Some of the things to note, the stormwater management area has changed slightly, just the shape and reconfiguration that pulled it farther away from the Charles River. The wetland replication area is unchanged. The roadway geometry is unchanged. Right now, we're only planning to construct up to the end of the Restaurant Depot parcel. But this second structural crossing may be put in at this time. The actual shape of the crossing hasn't changed, although the wing walls have been realigned slightly. And the purpose of that was to minimize wetland impacts. Similarly, the structural crossing of the Charles, the actual geometry of the bridge has been changed very little. The skew's been removed and the span has been extended to 54 feet, but it doesn't change anything within the roadway itself, below the bridge. And wing walls have been revised similarly to avoid wetland impacts. In addition, there's been additional detail added at things like the crossing of the Upper Charles Trail. We've added a flashing beacon as a result of the permitting process that we went through with the town. Some striping has changed, but again, the actual roadway geometry has changed very little since that original design in 2006. The next figure that I have is just an overlay, which shows you in black the actual geometry that was proposed in 2006, overlaid with a red 2017 geometry, and you can see that the curb lines line up exactly. It's mostly just some details around the crossings and the shape of the basin. Just wanted to show you briefly a rendering that we've prepared of what we've envisioned the structural crossing to look like. Again, this is going through review with Mass DOT right now, so they may change it slightly, but this is what we envision it to be. That's a precast concrete bridge with a form liner and then big block wing wall, retaining walls. So that's my
Great job.
All of
5
those,
minutes or less over.
all of those design aspects of this project have been gone through with the town engineer, the town planner, the highway surveyor. The chief has been involved, the fire chief has been involved. So, yeah, there has been an awful lot of time that has gone through, into this at all three levels of the approvals. The thing that makes this different, though, and this is what I want to make sure I say again, is this is an existing public way, which is why your board is so important. It's pivotal to come before you because it's already a town road. If this were just a subdivision road that we were proposing and we were developing, we'd be done and we'd be digging. But because it's a public way, there is that technical requirement that the Board of Selectmen exercise its jurisdiction over the public way. And what we're here tonight to do is to ask you simply to lend your voice to everyone else's and basically authorize us to move forward as we have been approved by all the local agencies. that's basically the presentation.
Okay. No, thank you, Mr. Pettinari. I understood it through Rick's explanation as well, that it's more or less a technicality, if that's fair to say, but I'll open it up to the board for any questions. Bill?
Thank you, Ernie, you did a great job, and Chris, you did as well. I don't have any questions. This is something I voted for. It's one of the majority members in the town meeting that voted to open up this property to do this and to make the exception from Office Park to include Office Depot. For the purposes, I think a lot of people did, right? It's there's opportunity for employment for folks within the community, and there are other options that might have existed that could have been much worse. Not to say that this is a vote that I didn't want to make. I did want to make it, and I did it happily. So I'd be happy to make a motion. But first, I'm sure the other members would like to say something. So.
Thank you, Bill. Mike, any questions or comments?
I do, and you have to forgive me for being the new member here, but I do have a couple, Ernie. And I probably should have been at some of the meetings. How does it impact the water struggle that we're already having in this community?
The provision of water?
Yes, in other words, the water company is saying they can provide water to the site
Absolutely.
without a problem.
Absolutely, and has from its inception. And this is a little bit more, well, actually, it's significantly more benign than even the office use would have been. So yes, the water company's basically given its blessing to this project.
Okay. And what will the impact to I imagine the only way into it is gonna be from Cedar Street or 85. How do you feel the traffic impact will be on that section of Route 85?
Well, you're looking at Chris, but that's been the subject of, of a lengthy series of traffic studies that were done as part of the original special permit approvals and site plan reviews. The immediate implications for this project is that it's going to require development of the roadway to facilitate a left turn lane, so that they could be access and then right turn only, and then a left turn committed lane. In the long run, there will be signalization, and even in the complete build-out of the project, there is approved by the planning board, and I think by the state as well, an actual roundabout to facilitate the minimal impact on traffic.
Thank you.
Yeah, they've approved the commitment to it through the Section 61 finding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Ernie, my only question is, because it's already a public way, and the extension, that gets this approval here, and then you're free to move on?
It got subdivision approval, and then, yes, the fact that we're accessing it via the public way, this approval does it, yes.
Okay, that's great. I don't have any further questions as far as I'm concerned. It's expanding commerce, expanding our tax base, and at a good location for that. So, Bill, do you want to make a motion?
I'll try to structure it in a way that's helpful to you, Ernie. What I would do is make a motion to approve Gutierrez Company, and specifically for Restaurant Depot, the approval by this board to extend and do the appropriate work for Deer Street, consistent with the site plan.
For a second?
I would second that.
And I'll vote in favor as well, so that's unanimous.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
No, you're staying, right?
You're staying.
Yeah. You gonna stretch your legs for a second?
Nice job, Chris.
Thank you.
Mr. Pettinari?
Gentlemen, I'm back. Ernie Pettinari, 12 Main Street. With me tonight is Bob Passaretta. Bob is a person who's been involved in the restaurant business, operating them, managing them, running them for his full professional career of almost 30 years. I distributed his resume because it's a fairly impressive resume. And you'll see that amongst his positions, he was actually the maitre d' at Capriccio's. He's got some real high-end restaurant experience. He's currently the owner and the manager of Gia's Restaurant over in Uxbridge. Bob contacted me several weeks ago through David Consigli and expressed an interest in attempting to open a facility in Milford at the site of the old Truffles Restaurant at 198 East Main Street. The impediment to that, as you gentlemen quite very well know, is that there isn't a liquor license that is pertinent to that facility. As you've also known, we have in the past sought home rule petitions at the town meeting in order to get an exemption from the quota for the operation of a particular facility at a particular location. Because I think it's important that everybody in the community that's watching tonight, and certainly your board, gets to see the kind of people that are making these presentations. We're here to do two things. We're first of all here to thank you for allowing us to include this warrant article in the warrant for this month's annual town meeting. But secondly, to let you meet Bob and to get a level of comfort for what it is he's attempting to do there. And what he's attempting to do there is to operate a first-class Italian restaurant in the town of Milford. We're going to be making the presentation to the town meeting in 2 weeks. And we wanted to start the process by introducing you to him and just to let you put a face with a name and to tell you again how much we appreciate the opportunity to go forward with this and obviously answer any questions you might have.
Great. On the front, just open it up to the board. Bill?
Sure. As your counsel pointed out, you have a fairly impressive resume. Not fairly, you have an impressive resume. And, you know, I, for one, on a personal note, would rather walk into a restaurant and see an owner than walk into a restaurant and be part of a chain. I think Milford and Milford restaurants that have been successful, that's helped, and it's certainly something that residents probably appreciate more than anything. But why don't we let you talk? Is there anything about the menu, anything about the restaurant that you want to do differently that you may not see being serviced in Milford?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great community, and we have a tremendous product at GIA. I've been affiliated with upscale restaurants, but I try to bring an upscale product at a family price. That's why we've themed our restaurant as upscale family restaurants, where you know, you can come in and have dinner twice a week and afford it, but you're going to get a better product than you're going to get definitely at a chain restaurant, but at a lot of other restaurants. Every restaurant I've opened has been successful. I had a restaurant in Rhode Island for 10 years called Isabella's, and it's probably half the size of the restaurant in Uxbridge, and it did double the business. Uxbridge is a nice, where I am is a very nice spot. It's very rural, as you know, and Milford, just that location, the traffic count is, you know, off the charts. A lot of business, a lot of professionals. So I think it's a home run.
Okay.
That's great.
Mike? So, I'm sorry, your plan is to move your current business from Uxbridge?
No, I'm gonna keep that
You're keeping
business.
that? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You made it sound like you were gonna.
No,
What's the
no,
opportunities
no. You know, it's a pretty successful restaurant as it is. So I just wanted to try to expand a little. I'm gonna be dedicating most of my time, obviously, to Milford. Seeing that it's gonna be brand new and we're gonna have all new people working there.
What do you plan on doing as far as store hours go, restaurant hours?
We'll probably close on Mondays just for sanity purpose. And then we'll be open lunch. Truffles, I guess, was a very successful restaurant for 10 years, but they never opened for lunch. We plan on opening for lunch and dinner,
Okay.
6 days a week.
Thank you.
All right, Bob, what's the timeline? I guess that's really my only question. If this all, obviously, we're successful at town meeting, which I hope you are, and we go from there.
The timeline would be how long it takes the town meeting warrant to be dissolved, the State House to approve the home rule petition, it to come back to the town of Milford, your board to schedule the public hearing on the license application. Realistically, maybe the fall?
Okay, all right, I was
That would
hoping
be-
for
that
3
would
months,
be-
maybe?
Yeah, well, probably closer to 4 or 5. But yeah, that would be ideal. And again, just so everybody understands, my philosophical approach to these has always been that the quota doesn't make sense in a lot of instances. This is one where it doesn't make sense. This is a restaurant that had been in existence for a long time, but because of the quota, it couldn't theoretically open without dispensation from the quota, A. And B, in terms of what it is that is proposed to be done there, the home rule petitions are written now in such a way that it will be personal to the location. So that, as I think your board understands, it's not going to affect the quota in the sense it can't be transferred off the site, et cetera, which I think addresses that as well.
Absolutely, and I think the quota is archaic, and I know that the Baker administration is talking now about having legislation to leave it solely up to the municipalities anyway, which would probably be a faster and more efficient way to go.
I think that's a smart thing.
Are you looking for, I mean, I know you don't need a vote, but do you want, a vote of support if the board's willing to do that? If
Absolutely, we would never turn that down if
would
that's what
either
the
of
board
you-
would
I
like to
mean,
do.
Again, I love the idea of restaurants and more commerce coming in. I don't know if that's something we want to do. I know you don't technically need that.
I think I will answer your question, Mr. Kincaid, this way. You've already demonstrated a great deal of cooperation that I'm very personally appreciative of.
Okay.
When we sent that first letter at the behest of David Consigli, you included it in the warrant. We
Yes.
appreciate that. Having us here tonight is again, something that we really do appreciate. I think it's, my opinion is, I think you understand what we're trying to do, and I think you support it as a concept. I don't know that I want to, force you into making a vote, but that would be my position.
Okay. Well, we'll see you at town meeting, and we'll be supportive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, folks.
Good luck to you.
Good luck, Bob.
That's what MacArthur said.
Next agenda item is the police chief and the building commissioner to talk about some property issues that we've had. Tom, John? Thanks, guys, for coming. I guess I'll start off just by saying that I'm probably the person responsible for bringing this to just the topic of conversation up. And then my fellow board members were obviously supportive of it. It started with one particular property. I received a few phone calls from some neighbors. And I just asked, and Rick checked on it, and one of the seniors that had called me had said, "Oh, the police were here again." And I said, "What do you mean again? They're always here." Well, when I hear they're always here, I'm thinking maybe 5 times in a year, or a lifetime is a lot. We obviously got a much larger record of that, and that just kind of opened other questions. Some are not within your jurisdiction. I mean, obviously, police responding. But it just kind of opened up, I think, everything that we'll talk about with probably at a greater level with the task force and everything. But it was particular to that initial property, and then some documentation that the chief provided to us. But John, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
Chief, I don't know if you just want me to hand it over to you, or if you just want me to kind of go through. I'm not looking to necessarily do a presentation on, obviously, all the information that you provided us. I think, with me anyway, I was very surprised by the number of calls that your folks were responding to in a single property that I had 3 complaints about. From there, it just kind of expanded to other questions of, is there anything else that we can do, either first as a police issue to support you and your men and women? Is there something that we should be doing as a board, notifying property owners? Because as I said when I first brought up that property on West Street, the landlord may not even know that maybe the police were interacting with his or her tenants that many times. I know when I've rented in the past, I'm not sure I would have called my landlord if the police showed up at my house. So it kind of started with general questions like that, and then the 3 of us ended up having greater conversation. So I guess, first, with that property at 32 West Street, I mean, 40 times in however many months, the 2 months, the 2 years that the information that you provided, I just wanted your opinion on that, because it kind of struck us as an awful lot, considering the entire population that you're responsible for, that many calls go into a single property. Is there anything else we can do to support you, your staff, your department? It was one of concern. So I guess that's a fair
Yeah, I think that we have to take a look not only at the frequency of the calls for service, but the nature of the calls for service. And then beyond the nature, the initial, what people told us was happening, and then what did we find?
Reality.
We know from our experience in doing licensed establishments that we'll receive a call and people tell us, well, there's a fight at this location, and we get there and it's not a fight, it's just some friends and they're potting and they're loud. Yeah, I think when we culled down even on that particular location that initially we discussed on West Street, some of those calls for service were unrelated to that residence. There were people in front that were talking loud on a cell phone, and one of the residents felt disturbed by that. By way of example, the destruction of property call was 4 young people from Medway who drove down West Street and with pellet guns and blew out people's car windows, and one of them happened to be a victim that lived at that address on West Street. So, and then I think in taking a look, as I provided the board with additional information on other residences, whether they be rented or homeowner, there are some family situations that require police intervention and emergency medical services intervention on a fairly regular basis as they try to deal with the dynamics of what's occurring within their family. So I think it's a matter of taking a look in more, first in a global way, and then coming really and culling right down into it to make a determination. As I indicated to the board, a couple of the locations, we did take out criminal complaints for having a nuisance dwelling. The standard it's a difficult standard to reach because many people, when they call the police to report a disturbance, they want to remain anonymous. So they don't tell us who they are, and we don't log it that way. When the officers arrive, the standard legally is you can't disturb my peace. Otherwise, out of unfettered discretion, I drive down the street and I just don't like that sound of that music or the lyrics, and I'm the cop and I get to bother you. So the courts have been very clear that when I arrive, if there is a real disturbance taking place, and I believe that it is impacting on not just the person that called, but more generally that neighbors in that area, yes, I can act, and I can ask them to turn the music down, I can ask them to quiet down, to go into the home instead of being out in the backyard. And then we do have the noise bylaw, so if it's after 11 p.m., we can impact on it in that way as well. Responding to those calls, our goal is to quiet things down, restore peace and move along. It's not to bring people in. There are a couple of circumstances where we felt that particular dwelling was creating a real nuisance without question for the neighbors. In one of those instances, we actually didn't have the complaints from the neighbors. It was, we're responding to overdose after overdose after overdose. So that's when we reacted with this. But the standard in trying to bring that charge, it's not an easy charge to bring. And we're held to proven beyond a reasonable doubt that those are the facts and circumstances. In those two cases, we're confident we could. In one of them, the magistrate kept that in a clerk's hearing and directed the homeowner that, and this was it wasn't rented property, it was the actual homeowner, directed them that they wanted certain things to be taken care of. And they ultimately were, and that charge was dismissed. So
Was that the 2015 complaint?
yeah, up on Highland Street.
Yeah.
So, the other charge.
I just say, I appreciate you explaining that, because I think that's what's important for people to, even at home that are watching now, knowing that that's even something that you have, if you can use it.
Yeah, and we do I mean, it falls under the same statute as disturbing the peace or disorderly conduct. And, there's been a number of challenges of whether or not it's vague on its face. And the courts upheld the statute as being, from the common law that, you know, if you're disturbing the peace, we all know, you're disturbing the peace, you're being a pain in the neck. So, they get it. It's just, you know, for us, we end up in situations where neighbors don't get along. You know, so this one has a gathering, you know, this Saturday, and that one calls the police, and this one has the gathering the next Sunday, and then they call the police. They just like to see us come to their parties, I guess. So long and short of it, there are places where we do respond quite often. And it really comes down to is our response reasonable? Are we responding because someone really needs police, fire, EMS services? Or is this a location that, as the two I showed the board, where, no, you're creating this situation. You are, it's a nuisance dwelling. You're creating the situation to occur at that location with the frequency that it does, such as the overdoses that were occurring time and day, and then, you know, because you folks received the pages that I send out, and, you know, when you see Main Street, Main Street, Main Street, Main Street, it's the same address. So we do monitor that. I don't have the ability, the software package, to say to the computer, give me a listing of properties by frequency of calls or number of calls. I can look at a set location, so, and we do that. I have an officer that goes out when the task force goes out. Al Bakayaki is generally the officer, and we'll take a look. You know, if we're going to a set location or a street, I can run calls for a street. And we actually, when we went to this particular software package, which is utilized by almost every police department in Massachusetts, if not Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and that's why we can share information so readily with those other departments. I can run on a street, but we took, when we switched over, and I think it was '04, we took all our records and converted them, so I can go back to like 1996, 97 on any piece of property or individuals we've dealt with. So we can do it by street. I do it, if I told you, I probably get in a month, 4 people, 5 people will call the police station and ask, you know, they're looking to buy a house. What can you tell me about this street, about this neighborhood? And I don't offer them the listing that you've seen on some locations, but I will give them a sense of what I see occurring on that street. And not surprising, it's generally not very much. You know, you can go anywhere in this town. At least I believe in you're safe. So we do that for people, you know, so they have a comfort level. They're making a large investment. They're moving to the community. But there are locations, as the board saw, where we do answer a large number of calls, but they're, and the ones that I gave you that have a very high number, they're truly warranted. There are people that are at that residence that are in need of services. One of them that has probably the highest number of calls, actually, as a residential property, the highest number is a senior citizen who has mobility and issues, and where either police, fire, EMS are there literally every day. That person will set off their alarm. And sometimes it's the smallest thing of they can't reach something, or they need a hand doing something, turning on the TV. We don't know when we get that alarm through, you know, service company, that all they tell us is they get in the lifeline, you know, and the person's not responding to them. So we don't know if it's someone that's having a heart attack, or if that person needs us to help them get a cup of tea. And so in my business, you know, one of the things many, many years ago when I came here to Milford, one of the complaints I heard was, geez, I call the police and they don't even come. So, and my officers will tell you, my philosophy is you call, we come. I don't care if your alarm comes in 5 times in the next hour, we're coming 5 times. Because in my career, I've been duped, or my department has elsewhere, where someone did just that. They set off the alarm and waited for the police to come, and they set it off again, they waited for the police to come, and then they broke in. So it's, if there's a need for us to come, if someone believes it on the other end of the telephone or the lifeline or the alarm, we're gonna respond. But we do work, as I said, there's certain information that, as the board saw even in the information I provided you, I'm obligated by law to redact. I can't release it as public. And likewise, in dealing with John and Paul Mazzucchelli and the others on the task force, Al Bakayaki can have that information, you know, so he has it readily in his head as they're going to look at a particular place or a street. Al has that information at his fingertips.
Well, I think too, like, you know, the list you provided, which I appreciate, you know, the non-residential ones weren't a concern, I understand, I mean,
Assisted living.
they're assisted
The
living.
nature of their business.
And then, you know, a number of them up on Senate Road and a few on Luby. I mean, when I see that, I don't know, I haven't been on the Housing Authority for almost 20 years, but when that was those properties, we used to get notified. I don't know if that's happening. And that's not necessarily your job, but that's where I'm saying that, like, with that West Street property, it was a very interesting chain of events for me, which you touched on, you may have touched on at some point, but what I saw wasn't either one of yours, because I sat out there when they evicted the 3rd floor. So we brought it up, it made the news, the landlord was contacted, the 3rd floor was evicted, 16 mattresses came out of it, multiple refrigerators, and everything like that. So, and that's me being a selectman that pulls over on the side of the road and watches myself. Because people are telling me things, and I'm like, no, that can't be. Now, if the Board of Health inspected that 5 years ago and been issuing things, they did what they were supposed to do. You're not going inside people's houses, as far as I understand, unless there's reason for you to actually go in there, right?
Correct.
You don't just knock on the door and then let you in.
Correct.
Or they don't have to. I mean, you've explained that to me, and you or your folks have no reason to show up there unless there's a call about it. So that's where I think there's a bigger problem, that's what I think people are kind of getting tired of, and that's why I'm going there myself and sitting there and watching and going, that was one apartment out of 3. So I think that's the whole thing where we see it as a task force issue, but it's not just you, it's also the health board and their compliance thing. So maybe, you know, and we'll talk about this, but Rick, and then my first meeting as chairman, I said I wanted to bring in outside boards, and I think we should have a joint meeting with the health board and Paul and invite them, because they're another part of it too. And they made nationwide, you know, news coming out with the bylaw and being compliant and all the overcrowding. So, I mean, we've done some amazing things here, but I think also if 5 years go by, we're gonna have an issue. I mean, again, I can't say enough. I appreciate the information you got back to us, and that was, I just wanted the landlord notified. He was. And you probably know better than I do, but he seemed to take action because somebody moved out. Maybe that was a coincidence, but I saw everything that came out of that one apartment. Now, none of us would have known all of that stuff was in there, because none of us have the reason to be in someone's home. Right? But we do have an overcrowding issue. If there's, I mean, that's an awfully big family. So I go on the port, I go up to the house, and there's also 8 different names on the mailboxes. So I'm just wondering, these are a lot of people, potentially.
Well, if I can just chime in at this point. That particular property, we had been in 2012. We issued them a certificate of inspection, meaning
Yep.
they were in compliance. We did get a complaint, I want to say 2013 or 14. We went back in. That particular landlord is very cooperative with all the town departments.
No, and you had mentioned that in your
And-
correspondence.
And, you know, they were in compliance then, and as a result of this most recent complaint, we got in again. And this landlord is very cooperative, and there's no deceit going on there. There might be between the tenant and the landlord.
Well,
but
that's
not-
what I
but
said
not
at the
between
meeting, that you can't hold a
landlord and
landlord
the-
responsible. That's why I want to tell them.
The thing I've always encouraged, you know, since we started the task force in 2011, is that the neighbors know what's going on, you know, most closely in their
Absolutely.
neighborhoods. And we've always encouraged them to call us if they have any questions or complaints, and if we can validate the complaints. I mean, we'll always contact the landlord, and we'll take the appropriate follow-up measures. I mean, you really know what's going on in your neighborhood more than
Absolutely.
we can do on a periodic inspection, whether it's every year or every up to 5 years. So I would encourage that to all the residents in Milford, that they know what's going on in their neighborhood, and be
You know, John, I think,
help be our
too, I
eyes and
think
ears.
you're absolutely right, but I think we're all insiders. And when town government, there's all these fiefdoms. There's not a mayor where you call and they just kind of take care of everything, and they tell the person to do this or do that. So I think sometimes people call you when you're not the guy to call. I think they call the Board of Health sometimes, when maybe they should call you or us or some other department. So I think that, and that responsibility, I think, is on us to see if there should be some central, point of contact, because you're dealing with the building, as you've explained to me in the past, the building code. Paul's dealing with the sanitary code, and I'm familiar with the sanitary code, but I know nothing about the building code. So, I mean, it's all these different components. So unless, you guys, again, this is more for the public than certainly me or the other folks at this table.
We do share information, though. I mean, I just last week.
Oh, I don't doubt the sharing,
Oh, no,
Chief,
no, no,
but
so
if
you
someone's
know.
sitting at their house, they don't know who to call.
If someone, but if they call, if I received an email from John just this past week, so
Yep.
folks call John with a complaint, it's my responsibility.
Yep.
So John sends me the email and copies them to let them know that, it lands on my desk. I have to deal with it. Very much like the trash issue bill that we dealt with. So there is communication among the departments. I don't want people, so if you call me and say, geez, I don't just say to people, oh, go see the building inspector. I take the information, I tell them I'm gonna send it to the building inspector, and that's who will be in touch with them, or the Board of Health, et cetera. So.
I don't doubt that.
As much as, if we, officers go into a residence, if we're there lawfully and dealing with a situation, if we see something that, wait a second, that's a fire code violation, we make sure we notify the on-duty lieutenant immediately. Likewise, if we think there's a building issue or hell.
Yep.
So it's brought to their attention. It doesn't just, that's not my problem. It
Well,
is
I don't think that at all.
Oh, no,
I
I
just
just
think
wanna
it's
be
the
clear so the
person,
public
yeah,
just-
that,
appreciates that.
And just to let both the board and the public to know, we do work very closely interdepartmentally between police, fire, building, water, health. The town clerk actually fields a number of, receives a number of these
Yeah,
initial
actually, I forgot
calls,
Amy,
because
yeah.
that's-
Amy
that
does.
seems to be everybody's, instinct for first contact, and our town clerk does a fantastic job of forwarding everything to the right department, and also saying, I'm not sure if this is you, if it's not, let me know. So we'll include Amy in our response. I don't think we could work any more collaboratively than we already do.
now how do we fix the problem?
Which problem?
Not the communication problem, but someone who got an issue of occupancy, and then things change over time when you're not in there. That's what I mean. How do we deal with that? I'm asking your professional opinions, because I don't know how. Because again, you have no right to be in their house or unless
Well, if
you
you-
get to that point, or until someone's called.
Unless you
So-
have a complaint.
If we
But
get
I
a-
can
if
go
we
and
get a
count
complaint-
names on mailboxes or stand at the end of the driveway on trash day and see a pile a mile high and go, that's a lot of trash for a 2-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom apartment.
So I don't know if there's any perfect cure or situation, but again, we do our diligent inspections, and we ask for the neighbors to let us know what they see in the neighborhoods. And we will inspect, we'll follow up. It may be that we notify our landlord and that problem disappears. Well, because.
Hey, that's okay.
That's what we're looking for, is compliance, and we have it in writing, we document them, that we've notified them that, we've had reports of this going on, and we have it for situations going forward, which sometimes we'll need to reuse, but, I don't know how first of all, we have to identify a problem before we can solve it.
Absolutely. And I think that's,
Or prove that it
and we certainly did
If it
at
went away
one.
without us
So
proving
I might
it-
have a lot more to do.
We have compliance,
you know-
and that's our ultimate goal, is compliance, right?
No, there's no question. And I'm just thinking, if we have to do them one at a time, then that's what we'll do. We did it. We did it once. So, just in the last couple of weeks. So I think again, my whole point of asking Rick for the information from the calls is just because a very elderly woman said to me, oh, they're always here. okay, just curious about that. So, and then, to me, maybe it was a coincidence, but it was just all of that chain of events happened within a very short period of time at one address. So I think the right thing got done. I don't know if even the people that were the problem were the ones that left, but, you know, there was some action that happened. So I felt, at least that from a town, we had that much of a victory. But
And again, that came from
this-
somebody that knew what was going on there, which kind of, you know,
Well, then I guess having these conversations, and I've dominated the conversation at this point. Bill, do you have any questions? Or-
Yeah, I do. I appreciate, Tom, I appreciate you coming up with this information. This is the type of information, I think, as we start to pour through it. You know, I would encourage you to, you know, I don't know, work with Rob Bonnell or somebody on that. If that software can dump to an Excel file, then somebody can screen it differently and do just a database drill down that may be easier than polling the police officers and all that. I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the software, I'm not familiar with the software. Sometimes database people can just export it to Excel and then they can do their own analysis. But I wanted to just probe and understand the level of information sharing, because we have a problem to solve. I think I'm actually glad that property showed up on our radar screen, or your radar screen. So I got a call as well, because the question that makes a reasonable person look at that data and say, when was the last time the task force was there, right? We assume, based on this discussion, that the task force has that information. And so if we use that West Street property as the benchmark, then it would have seemed to have warranted task force attention. Because I would expect that one of the indicators in the rationale or algorithm or whatever it is, that a deciding factor whether a property is prioritized, would be the number of nuisance calls. Number of things that, from a police officer or professional's opinion, that warrants, there's a frequent flyer. There's somebody that warrants some extra attention, because there's likely something going on and more people living in that apartment or whatever. So it begs a question on the task force, how frequently the task force would have been at this, or the last time the task force was at a property like this. Or, if it's not at this property, then it's at 10 other ones because they warrant more attention and time, because they're getting more calls. And I say it from the perspective, Tom, and you're an expert at this. I look at it, I'm shocked by information. But it's obviously a property like that is very disruptive to the neighbors. The people living in it, the children living in the building, the people living next door. So the question is, how would we have gotten, what would we want to change going forward so that this would have gotten task force attention? Because it doesn't even show up on the list, and I don't know if they already excluded that property because it was already in the media 3 days running, that they said, okay, they know about that one. Here's some other ones, right? It doesn't show up in the next list, right, as one of the frequent. And I'm going to guess that's because the police officers you polled said, they already got that one. That one's understood. But there's more, and here's some others.
And that's precisely the point.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, are there others? But I think even if you really, again, take a look at the information from that West Street property, you're talking a period of 3.25 years, 3 1/3 years, and you look at the nature of the calls. I mean, a couple of things. One, the people that are living there now may not have lived there 3 years ago. So you get a change of circumstances in properties as well. But even in culling down, you know, and when I dug into those calls, you know, you have 10 calls coming from one apartment complaining about the other 2. You have a call for the same noise complaint to the person that calls about the other 2. A suspicious person was someone that was headed to the wrong apartment. You have a number of medical-type calls as far as someone that, you know, the court is directing they need medical services. The landlord-tenant argument was actually the person who complained about the other two apartments was in the conflict with their roommate and claimed to be the landlord, and that person's now the tenant. It wasn't the actual owner of the property as the landlord. And then you have a number of calls, as I indicated earlier, where they're actually out on West Street. And there are people that are unrelated to that property who are noisy. The fireworks call was on July 4th, and we do fireworks calls across the town. So I think once motor vehicle accident, we use the address because we have to have a geographical point of where the crash took place. So if it's on West Street and it happens to be in front of number 1, then it's gonna come up if you run a listing for number 1. So I guess my point being is, and I mentioned the vandalism call, they were victimized by 4 kids from Medway that were blowing out people's windows with pellet guns. So as you cull down into the calls, and that's what I want to impress upon the board is, I don't think you can just take a look at a property and say, wait, you've had 40 calls at this location in 3 years. Because I don't think that tells a true picture, no more than it does, as I mentioned, when we do licensed establishments. You look at the number of calls we've had at Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, because we've asked them to call. We've encouraged them.
But we notify them.
Sure, but we've encouraged them to do so, and they're doing it. And as a result, we have seen changes in those locations. So I think you're right, Bill. I think in taking a look at a property, if we see that frequency, as we did with the 2 locations where we actually took out criminal charges, just not disorderly, not disturbing the peace, you're running a dwelling, that's a disturbance. So we've done that, on those 2 occasions because those properties, you're right. It wasn't just the frequency or the number of incidents, it was the nature of the incidents as well. So I think you're on the right track. I think it's a matter of really taking a look at, did this property jump out at us? Honestly, it didn't. And as I break down those calls, it really wouldn't. To have a dwelling with 3 apartments and to have this neighbor call about that neighbor, as I said to you, I can, off the top of my head, name probably 3 places where now the weather's warming up. We get every single weekend, one or the other's calling about each other.
And the reason why I ask is it was interesting at the last meeting. I asked the question that way for a reason, because if you're unable to pull up the data in that fashion, then you may be inhibited from providing the right data at the right time to the task force.
You're not, because if you give me a location, so if they know.
No, let me say this. What I'd like is for the collaboration to be so strong within the boards, between the boards and departments, that I'd like police officers within the task force to say, guys, I'm not sure, in a preparatory meeting, right, to say, I'm not sure where you guys are thinking today, but, I've got 4 properties that are just showing up a lot in my database. And frankly, the test for me is I don't want to be a neighbor to any one of those properties, right? A reasonable person, that's the test for me for reasonableness. If I want to be a neighbor to that property, I don't think I would have wanted to be a neighbor to the West Street property either. But that said, whatever it is that in the professional judgment of the police officers, they're able to get information, influence the task force, and say, these 4 or 5 properties should be visited, so my vote for prioritization is this, and this is why. And then with the other task force members, because that certificate on that house had expired, right? If I recall correctly, the information provided by your office, John, indicated that certificate of occupancy had expired on that
No, it
property.
hadn't.
No, what was the certificate that had expired?
Not on that one. That one was issued from memory in 2012, so it's due to expire the end of 2017.
All right, I'll go back and look at the information, because I thought I had seen something that indicated. But in any case, so we have to find a way to get the data, and we have to find a way, I think, to explain rationale to a community that says, this is how we're prioritizing homes. It's not, let's go see West Street today, or Lower West Street, because I've gotten a lot of calls down there about this property. That might show up, sure. It may not be the highest priority. So I don't know how it's done, and I don't know whether we can data extract out of that database to do a query, and whether it's porting it to Excel or some other tool. But what I'd like to see, and I think you hit on the right topics, Mr. Kincaid, is that we find a way to solve the problems, and we find a way, because I think it's an evolution, right? Like with any process, we're looking for a way to do it with less labor, more intelligently, higher, changing priorities, because I think it evolves, right? You get, a team or group gets smarter over time and does things differently to test their assumptions. And I look at you guys are the experts. But when I hear, 10 names on a mailbox, when I hear 13 or 16 mattresses coming out of a building, those are the ones I want to be able to target within the task force, and I want to use all the tools within the toolbox to get there. And what I'm asking you guys, and I think this board is asking, between you, the Board of Health, and the members of the task force fire department, how do we get that toolbox? How do we keep improving that toolbox so that it refines itself over time, and that we're hitting the right priority, we're hitting the right ones? So if there's a high priority and they've been there a year, before they leave in 2 years, right? And now you're looking at different data set from a different tenant. So I'm going to ask if maybe this board can ask the task force to drill down a little bit and see how they incorporate this data, so that, similar to the violations that you look at and you provide to this board, Chief, over a period of time, number of violations per location, but I don't need to see a lot of it. I can look at the 60,000 foot level. I think it's task force, that type of data you provide us, but on residential units, that the task force is looking at continually.
But therein lies the difficulty, Bill, because the information I provide you on licensed establishments is my ability to go into
Software.
IMC, into the software, and say, give me all the calls for the past 3 months for this location. And so that's, all that data that I pull out is all location-driven by where those licenses
Okay.
are situated. So but I don't want to leave you with the impression that, we don't turn to John and we don't turn to Paul and say, hey, wait a second, we were at this location. You have to take a look at it. The cops do, as I said to you, when they see something that's just, wait, this isn't right, it is passed along. And I guess the example is the information that you're looking at of, you say to the officers, okay, tell me the places where you go quite often. And frankly, they came up with locations that right off the top of my head, from my just listening to the radio or actually responding to those calls as well. So I don't think that, the officers respond to a set location and it's repeated, that it just gets, oh, well, we'll just keep going. There are some, as I said to you on the list, where we're gonna go there every day because the services are needed there every day. And sending those folks a letter or whatever isn't gonna change the circumstances of the dynamics of what's occurring in their family. I do think that we take a look at information on locations. The Highland Street, by way of example, we did involve John, we did involve Paul, And we did take out the criminal complaint ourselves because it was the only way to address it. But, you know, I don't have a problem. I mean, I'll go back, I'll talk to Rob Bonnell. I just know that the software package, and to make sure I was absolutely correct, you know, I turned some of my dispatchers are gurus with this software.
Sure.
You know, so I
Yeah,
turned to
they're
them and
frequent
said, "Okay,
users, yeah.
Tell me how you can do this, and,
Yeah.
you know, so.
So it may be an extract you may need to do, but, and I don't know that even that's possible, but what was the disposition on the 2017 criminal complaint taken out? Has that been?
Pending.
It's still pending?
And the person, we're able to persuade that person to go into treatment. So that property is literally quieted right down.
Okay.
From the point where Amy, you know, working with us, we're able to get him into treatment. We're able to remove the other individuals from that property at his request as trespassers. And then we haven't had a call there since.
Okay. Because the property on Highland Street certainly was one that I was getting a lot of calls on. I'm going to venture a guess, I get
still
15
crops up.
calls,
It
and it's
still
still
crops
cropping up. And it's certainly one of those properties where I don't want to be a neighbor either. Unfortunately, there are neighbors there.
It's a difficult issue to deal with because if you take the age of the homeowner, you know, there's a sympathetic person there that you end up, you know, in court with. And frankly, the court, you know, lends them some understanding.
Okay. That would, you know, if I could just, I think, hear from, what's the next phase of task force, how it evolves, how it utilizes this data, how it utilizes other data, and how it might want to revamp even. I mean, if I'm hearing the task force is working perfectly, and I know perfect, I don't mean to be sarcastic in the way I say that, and that there aren't adjustments that need to be made, somebody ought to say that, but get together with the team, think about how we may do this, and think about what brought to light this type of discussion. Because now, after this packet, I would be targeting a couple more, right? Through the task force. I would bring all the toolbox
But
to a
as
couple.
But as I indicated.
And I don't mean the medicals.
There's some on there that set aside even the medicals. There's some on there that you can send the task force to that residence, you know, it's homeowner, they reside there. We're not gonna resolve that issue. You're dealing with mental health issues that are, you know, that we deal with each day as that family does, unfortunately. We end up involved.
And that's why I think asking your professional discretion and professional expertise, which ones you're gonna be able to target.
And that comes in as a disturbance call, it comes in because that person can be disruptive. And the neighbors, you're right, Bill, you know, are they happy about living next door? Not necessarily.
And no offense, right? We expect that public safety officials responding to calls are gonna use their sirens. So just the frequent number of ambulances, police cars, and everything else that show up with sirens on is its own disturbance on top of the other disturbances. And as a matter of fact, the person that contacted me, and I think spoke with you, said exactly that. The police are always here, and by the way, the siren's always wailing at different times of the night and day, are its own disturbance. Now, we expect you to use your sirens, it's not a knock on the sirens. I don't want to drag out this discussion, but what I'd like to do is see if there's an opportunity to retool the task force and ask the task force to get together. Again, we're asking for the professional expertise of inspections, Board of Health, police, fire, and talk about how, where we know there are disturbances and issues, the test should be, do you want to be a neighbor to that property? And then prioritize those, because you can only work on the top 5 at a time, and, you know, go from there and move on. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So you know, initially walking with the task force for the first 2 or 3 years was highly effective. I think we'd all agree on that. And I would welcome another approach to you know, targeting more specific occupancies, because we've been walking for quite some time without finding the results of numerous violations that we were finding years ago. I
yep.
mean, we'd walk down the street and we'd have a week's worth of work. Those, for the most part, have disappeared, at least on all the streets we were targeting initially. So I don't know if there will be a correlation between number of calls and violations that the task force can find and can enforce, but I'd certainly welcome that, you know, a new approach to seeing if we can be more effective.
Yeah, and maybe they're getting too dispersed. Maybe we need a hotline. You know, Boston put in a pothole hotline. Maybe we need a hotline that aggregates all of the calls. Maybe we need a website for those people who are more web-friendly, email-friendly. Whatever it is that you guys come up with, I'm going to let the experts come up with what the new approach is. Because if the walking process, saying let's go do Lower West Street or let's go do this street, Lower Water Street, isn't going to be effective any longer, the residents know they exist. You hear about it, I hear about it, you hear probably the same things I hear and this board hears. So maybe there's a way to make that
I'd
more
agree that a
effective
new
one.
approach is probably the best course of action at this point. We do have to recognize that unless we have some sort of probable cause, if the owners or landlords aren't cooperative in letting us in, and most of them are, we can't demand to get in. If we have cause, we can go get an administrative warrant, and we've done that. But, you know, those are some of the other challenges that we face, and I'm not using that as any kind of a.
Oh, that's legit. And that's what my
But
argument was.
just something to recognize, you know, we do have limitations.
No, and I just go back to, again, I've only taken on one property myself so far, and it resulted between whether there was a correlation or not. I went off the information you provided, and it ended up with the landlord being notified. And whether he knew about it or not, he reacted. And I counted mattresses and names on mailboxes on the way out. So I'm a simple guy, and maybe that was a coincidence. Hey, I hope it is. I just have a feeling it's not. But I do want to go on to Mike before we move on to the agenda.
Thank the both of you for coming in this evening. Is it my understanding that the only way the task force can operate is through a complaint? In other words, does a complaint have to come into either Amy, the police, the fire, John, your department, before the
Oh,
task force?
Generally, so Mike, the task force is a collaboration that started in 2011 between police, fire, Board of Health, and building. And we had so many problem properties that we would walk the downtown neighborhoods, being Lower Water, Lower West, Bancroft Ave, Oliver Street, and a number of other streets. And we'd walk a street and we'd find, we found some things that I don't know if I'd call them task force issues, but they were life safety issues, houses that didn't have the right number of means of egress, or fire escapes that weren't tested and certified. And those were all things you could recognize from the outside. We found some that had, you know, abundance of junk or trash in the yards. And that was something we needed the Board of Health for back then, because that predates the nuisance bylaw that we have as a general bylaw, which, I'll try and sum it up quickly. It deals with serious overgrowth of brush and construction debris, items left for trash that have not been removed. So now Board of Health and I, and inspections, have parallel enforcement on that problem. So we would generate most of our own complaints for the first few years. Around that same time, I started full-time in September of 2011. In early 2012, I started doing the required inspections of multifamily dwellings, which is 3 and above. Two-family is not a multifamily in terms of the building code. And those are required to be inspected every 5 years. And we hadn't been into any of those. So we then focused on the task force getting into the multifamily dwellings 3 and above. And we would be inspecting, you know, primarily for life safety, or that's the inspiration for going in, is to keep people safe. But along that way, we would notice if there was an illegal apartment or any other conditions that warranted a follow-up. So we've gotten into virtually all of the multifamilies since that time. So most of this was self-generated, self-motivated. And now we're hitting, 2012, now we're into 2017, so we're hitting these multifamilies you know, we're continuing the cycle of getting in periodically, which is a building code term, to inspect them again for safety and, of course, zoning and fire regulations compliance, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors.
So when, the occupancy permit is issued every year, correct?
No, that the certificate of inspection, which is different from a certificate of occupancy, and these are formal building code titles, is required every 5 years on a multifamily dwelling, and that's what we began issuing in 2012. And that's different from the certificate that the Board of Health issues for rental properties, which is the part of the occupancy bylaw, Article 37 of the town bylaw, and I don't want to misspeak on the title of their certificate. It's very similar and it's very confusing. But, you know, working so closely, when there's any confusion with residents, we.
They don't necessarily inspect those every year, Mike. You have to have the permit. So you come down and you pay, it's a nominal fee compared to the actual, when they had to do the initial inspection. So it's not someone that actually goes out to that property.
They're entitled to, though, right?
Yes.
They just couldn't,
I understand
they
that.
couldn't do a wholesale one because it would just be time and cost prohibitive, right? But if there's, again, something that flags their attention, they could
Then
say,
you-
no, we're going into this one.
Then you're in violation of the actual permit that was issued to you.
Right.
So, yeah,
Okay.
you're right, Bill.
Well, that's why I'd like to talk to the Board of Health too, and I
Yeah.
did run into a Board of Health member over the weekend that wants to have a joint board about a couple of different subjects, so I think this is probably something to discuss, because it might be time to support them in going out and doing these
Yeah,
again.
and this is the quality of life stuff, right? This is the stuff, the things that are impacting people's, ability to sleep, ability to live in their home, comfort,
Well, I
with
think the other
comfort.
thing too would be important is, to see the plan of how you, when you start your re-inspections, what does that plan look like? How many are you doing a day? Maybe you're only doing one a day, maybe you're doing 3 a week, or, so that the general public can say, we know you're out there, and this is, this is what we're doing, just, so that they can see it, because I'll be honest with you, everybody in this room can drive around Milford and from the outside see properties that you say, geez, now with the inside, I don't know, but I mean,
Well, the problem is, people may not keep their properties the way any of us here would, but it's whether or not it's a violation, and that's, we have this nuisance bylaw, and again, it's drastically different from what I would enforce in the general bylaw, nuisance bylaw, than what the chief's referring to as a criminal nuisance. And I don't want that to be lost on anyone in the conversation. But we have, we have trouble if a place is just not very nice looking, we can't, we don't have a violation. And, I tell people that probably weekly, that property's not how I would keep my property, but there's no violation there of anything that I enforce.
And I think what we're looking for is the task force members to get together and find us a path to yes, right? Because the path to yes may be that the task force is going to recommend that property, while not covered by the bylaws, we should be making a recommendation and a proposal to change the bylaw so that those types of things don't come up again. See, that's what I'm not seeing. And if there are speed bumps, if there are roadblocks or inhibitors to you doing an effective job at the level of the community standard that you think the community standard is, because people tell you all the time what their standard is, but then let's run that by town meeting, and let's bring up a new bylaw or an adjustment to a bylaw. I'm looking for the path to yes, the path to success, because I know there are roadblocks and I know there are inhibitors. We should be knocking those down one by one, so that we're not saying we're doing the same thing that we were doing in 2011 or 2014 or when it's 2017. So that would be my ask, and if the committee could get together, we're in great shape. And I don't want to, I know we got people
No, we're
on
gonna
the
move on.
agenda.
I'm gonna follow up with Rick anyway and see what's next, because this is gonna be something that we're gonna keep working on and ongoing. And I think the Board of Health is a huge part of that, and they're going to be, and they've done terrific things, so I think we just have to see what they need to do to do next or do over again, and we'll see if we can support them. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in.
Thank you.
Pleasure, thank you all.
Thank you.
I apologize to the folks waiting. This obviously, we're a little behind schedule. Next is Kevin Lobiser for the proposed 40B Birch Street project. Kevin, how are you?
Very good. I did not bring a,
Easel?
yeah, but I'll put them up, but I'll do it after. Is that okay?
You can put it on, you can lean it such that it might be on a chair. There you go. Or, I don't know if getting it on this one may allow the camera to get it.
I think we can stick it up here, Bill.
Put it on the chair, and then let the camera hit it. We try. Dan will tell you.
Good evening.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin, introduce yourself.
I'm Kevin Lobiser. I'm a lifelong resident of Milford and also one of the owners of 46 acres on the corner of Industrial Way and Birch Street. So it's sort of on the entrance of Industrial Way, and it's behind the Birch Street Fire Station. The reason why I wanted to sit down with the board tonight was to obviously explain the project, but also to find out what your level of interest would be to file jointly with us on a local initiative, which is basically a friendly 40B. The benefits of the friendly 40B would be that instead of the normal course of action, which would be a developer would file with DHCD, get a site eligibility letter, and then just show up with the ZBA, it's sort of a shock to the town. As I said, I've been in town for 47 years, and I'm not interested in shocking the town. So, so that was my biggest reason for wanting to come to see you guys tonight. I know it's obviously a pretty detailed process, and I just wanted to start off by showing you the project and see what you guys thought. So I'm gonna stand up if that's all right.
No, that's great.
So I mean, it's a little light, but just to be able to give you an idea, this is the Birch Street Fire Station. And our road, we actually do have an access through there. It's a deeded right for us. Our road will be approximately 900 feet. It's gonna consist of 4 buildings. 3 of the buildings are 36 units. 1 of the buildings is 48 units, which is the lower building, because we do have a walkout condition. Oh, sorry about that. We're also trying to provide some scattered detached garages for each of the buildings. It's only gonna total about 32 garages, but it's just just to offer some of the people a little enclosure. Let's see, we have proposing a mailroom. We're proposing a dog kind of area fenced in. And, each of the buildings would be served with an elevator so that they're all fully accessible. So they really are gonna be available for anybody from, millennials on up to any age. So that's the neat thing about that. One of the things, though, is that when the town doesn't have zoning for apartments, you do have to go under typically some sort of a 40B plan. The downside to that is that when you do apply as a 40B, whether it's a friendly or it's not, you are obligated to do 10% of the units as 3-bedroom. So there could be, honestly, there could be a few kids in the project. So it's not like you can just direct it to be just 1-bedroom or just 2-bedroom. So our current thing would be, the total is 156 units, and 10%, which is rounded up, is 16 units. And then I believe we were around, I have the numbers over here, but I had 62 units that were gonna be 1-bedroom and 78 that were gonna be 2-bedroom. So that was the general mix of what we were looking to do. Some of the concerns that we were looking at was, we do know that we do have the burn tower that currently exists at the fire department. Just for illustration purposes, again, I know this is kind of light. The closest unit that this is, I should have said, that the project that does abut us is Birch Hill condos. Their closest unit is 250 feet to the burn tower. Our closest unit would be 275. So I think that they're currently existing with that situation. Our closest unit to the existing Birch Street to our building is approximately 200 feet. We've already done all of the topography We have located the wetlands, and you guys are the first board I'm coming to see.
Before I open the question, well, first, I want to thank you for that. When I know you first, I believe either sat down or notified the town administrator, Rick Villani, because I wasn't familiar with the term friendly 40B. I certainly know what the outcome of other 40Bs have been when people come in and we find out through state channels that applications are filed. So I do appreciate you coming and presenting to us. What is the process?
Under the friendly 40B?
Yes.
So under the friendly 40B, again, the benefit is that we would be able, as a developer, we'd be able to work with some of the town agencies, obviously the police department, fire department, get things introduced to Concom to make sure that they're comfortable with what we're going to do. We would then be coming back to the board, if you were interested. We'd come back to the board with hopefully positive recommendations from all those, different agencies. And then we would, as a developer and as the Board of Selectmen, we would jointly sign the application that would be filed to DHCD. It takes about 60 days to hear back from DHCD to receive a site eligibility letter. Now, that is typically, the site eligibility letter is what always triggers your first meeting with the zoning board to start, to start the process of a typical 40B. So obviously, in a friendly 40B, the ZBA would have known about this, through all these other channels the whole entire time. So the hope is that by the time you get to that point, we've already kind of hashed out a project that makes sense. So,
Well, let me open it up to the board. Bill, do you?
Yeah, thank you. Evan, what type of occupancy would this type of land sustain on an unfriendly 40B?
well, yeah, and I should have started with that, so I do apologize. The whole property, as I said, is 46 acres. The parcel that I'm showing you guys right here is approximately 21 acres. The remaining 25 acres is actually all down along here, which runs to Industrial Way. So currently, the whole property is zoned, I believe it's IB, that's Highway Industrial. So our plan would be to, for the most part, split the property in half, and then on Industrial Way, still develop approximately 3 to 4 industrial buildings, and then use this back half, which hopefully this illustrates it enough that we're really trying to tuck this into a, pretty wooded area and relatively isolated area. So currently under the zoning, residential would not be allowed. But through the 40B,
Right.
that allows it.
But I'm just saying, if a developer came to us from Ohio,
Oh, you could probably put, I mean, I do work with a 40B consultant on a regular basis, and, I hope that you guys get to meet him maybe at the next meeting. I just didn't want to overwhelm people with too many people tonight. His first thought to me was, why wouldn't you be doing 350 units there? And it was the same answer that I started off our meeting. I'm from Milford.
right, I live there.
And I feel like with the way we're doing this, really kind of clustering in them, closest condo to us is 200 feet. The rest of it is all woods that we own, so there are no other abutters. I felt like it was a really good location. We do have town water, town sewer, natural gas, close to 495. And the biggest thing is that currently, as of the end of March, the town of Milford is only at about 6.3% affordability. So it's leaving the town about, really open to some tough 40Bs because they're about 424 units short. Another thing that we would be doing, or I would be proposing, is that I would put all of these affordables in perpetuity so that there was no expiration on the affordability of the units, which helps us, because so if we do 25% affordable, plus doing that with in perpetuity, that gives us 156 units that we can use towards the 424 units that the town is short for affordability, because they're rental.
Yeah, I want to make sure it's clear to people, the difference between affordability and low income. People always confuse the
Yes.
two of those. Can you describe what the
Yeah.
40B requirement is for affordability?
Yeah, so we would not be looking for federal or state funding to build the project. So that is one of the things that, that you need to be able to do if you're gonna do a friendly 40B. And we would be funding this, you know, privately. On top of that, we will not be, it will not be dictated to us on what we have to do for the affordability. So our affordability, the first tier of affordability is 80% median income for our area,
Okay, all right.
which is scary because that really means it's police officers, fire department, school teachers, highway department. It's not, this is not Section 8 housing. This is not
Right, right,
subsidized
right,
housing.
right.
It's not 70%, it's not 60%, it's 80% of the median income.
Okay.
And that's Boston's median income because we're of our location.
Those are my questions. I think I have a general idea, and from a philosophical standpoint, I just want to say it's 6.3%. Meeting 6.3% of the state requirements is not going to make it. So we've got to find a way, and neither is saying no to everything, because that frankly will not work. So the difference is how to get to 10%. We get to 10%, the unfriendly 40Bs can't knock on our door, have no right to visit, and are not going to dictate terms. If we're not encouraging friendly 40Bs, then we're not going to get to the 10%. We're just going to wait for the unfriendly ones. So what I'd like to hear, and from a proposal like this, is I'm in favor of, I'm generally in favor of the concept. I'm okay with how you've laid some of this out. I look at the renderings, and it looks like places I'd want to live in, so that's the easiest thing for me to gauge, I guess. I'm going to be downsizing at some point, right? And, you know, we've got to figure out a way to have property for our police, firemen, teachers, and the people who want to downsize.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that that was sort of my idea, but the reality is that a couple other towns that abut us had reached out to me over the last couple of years, and they were in very similar positions. Their housing stock is lower than Milford's,
Yeah, much
but
lower.
their affordability level, I mean, for the most part, everybody is teetering between 4% and 7%. It's not easy to get to the 10%. And those towns actually came to me and said, you know, hey, Kevin, we've identified a couple of parcels that if you think you could do it, we'd actually help you with the zoning, but as long as you'll do 25% affordable and blah, 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 to help us get to our number. So I'm not here asking for zoning changes or overlays. I just thought that in Milford, it's a little different. It's a larger community, be a bigger project. In those other smaller towns, they were coming to us and they wanted, you know, like around 60, 70 units, just because, again, I think Milford's housing is around 11,700 total, I believe. And in these other communities, the total housing is 5,000 or 6,000. So it's a much different size community.
No, but I find it interesting what you just said, that communities that want to work themselves out of the unfriendly 40Bs, where somebody from some other state comes in and a large corporation comes in and dictates the terms, they're actually reaching out to you to see what you'll do on a friendly basis where they can work with you.
Yes.
That's what we should be doing. So that's what we should be doing, and we should be encouraging it and finding local builders to help us get to the 10% level. 'Cause I don't see anything changing at the state level.
No. If anything, I think it's going to get probably worse.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, thank you, Bill. Mike, any questions or comments?
Kevin, thank you. A couple of questions on impact of services. Have you considered what the impact to the schools might be with a project like this?
We haven't gotten that far, honestly, yet, but again, in all the other projects that we've ever done that are 1 and 2 bedroom, it brings in virtually 0 children. The 3 bedrooms, I think, potentially will bring them in, so I'm not trying to, pull the wool over your eyes. Unfortunately, or fortunately, and I don't want to be anti-children either, we're just dictated that we have to do the minimum of 10%. What I will say is that the non-friendly 40Bs will try to push as many 3-bedrooms as you can, because you know what the housing stock looks like. I mean, where's Josh? He's in the crowd. You know, I mean, to be able to get affordable housing, I mean, to rent a home, to have a couple of kids, a married couple, you're $2,500, I don't even know what it would cost, honestly, in this area. So when there's apartments that are available that might be $1,800 and they're brand new with elevators, with all that stuff, you can see that a non-friendly 40B, they want to put as many 3-bedrooms in as they can. Whereas by doing something, collaborative with the town, we're trying to hit that as the minimum threshold, but get the maximum benefit of the affordable units.
The reason I ask that question is for the general public, who I hope knows, for example, the new Woodland School that we just built is a school that was built to max capacity. And I was the one that was arguing the point, if we're at 1195, why are we building a school for 1,198 students? Let's build it at 1,400. It was a state law that said, no, you have to build to max capacity. So here we have this brand-new, beautiful, state-of-the-art school. So, and I love I love the way it looks and everything. I'm just saying, the first question I would have is, what possibly could the impact be to and particularly, something like this may be a little bit more affordable for a younger family, which means it's gonna impact the elementary school grades, to me, more than the high school grades. I go back to another question I just asked earlier, because we saw the old water ban sign on the fence on the corner of Congress. Now they've lifted it to where you can run your irrigation systems odd, even days, you can use a garden hose. Again, I gotta ask the question, anything on the impact of the water, or maybe you haven't gotten that far?
Yeah, I haven't gone that far yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly would be going down that road. Another reason
Yeah, I'm
to
not
try to
trying to
work.
trap you.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fine. When it's a non-friendly 40B, if water and sewer exists in the town, whether you have a moratorium on it or not, if it's going by your property, the state does not want to hear it. It's going into that project. So I'm not trying to negotiate against myself or either, but if we start to meet with these boards and they say, geez, Karen, we could probably, handle 125 units or 128, this is a friendly process. So we would all use our heads and say, okay, it should be dropped, I don't think that we should arbitrarily drop it, because every unit that we lose here means someone else is coming in and they might be, there might be 50 more 3-bedroom units. So sometimes, it's not a great idea to do that. But obviously, we would have to go through the process with the water and sewer.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Kevin. No, again, I think the reason that we wanted to make sure we had you in, and you said it, is you and your partner are both from Milford, and you both live here, raise your families here.
Yep.
And if we're going to have something like this, I, for one, I think I'm echoing Bill, that I'd rather be dealing with someone that we can talk to, that we grew up with, and not dealing with a stranger. So I certainly appreciate that. For us to continue the conversation, what is the next step?
The next step would be that, if you have some interest in trying to see what the next step looks like, then I will sit down with my consultant who puts together some of the other information that we're looking at, like what the children could be, who's our typical person gonna be here, just kind of take our stuff to the next level. I'll probably meet with the fire chief, I'll meet with the police chief, and try to come back here with some general, understanding of what I found out inside the community, and to give you guys some comfort level on either going one way or the other. And I would, just to echo, I know a Bill in the previous thing, I do try to design everything I build as if I'm gonna live next to it. And, hopefully you can see that here by, maybe you can't, but I mean, we have, stone veneers here, different types of sidings, different type of roof lines. There's cheaper ways to build these things, they could look like the microtels, and if, one roof line going through. Every single gable that we add onto this thing is an expense, but it also sets it up and makes it look like something that I feel like we could be proud of. Hopefully you guys know my work around town. I listen to all the stuff with the, trying to help out and, what are you doing for the town, blah, blah, blah. And, honestly, I try to live my life every day, like one building at a time in downtown Milford, I redid the 129 South Main. We have urgent care in there now. Tore that gas station down and did that. 21 Main Street we've done. 308 Main Street I just did, and that's ear, nose, throat, and plastic surgery now. you know, I feel like everybody would be proud of this project here too, and I'm constantly looking for old buildings in Milford to try to figure out, you know, what we can do to fix it and, you know, raise everything up a little to what I think we all, you know,
We're chasing.
would be proud of, so,
Very interesting evening tonight. This is good.
yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, you know, we're trying to get to the 10%. We ought to be clear about that. And, you know, not to be your counsel or anything, but for folks that might be watching that don't understand the nature of the discussion and where we need to be, the state is going to allow people from out of town to come in and build in much bigger projects. Nothing precludes this applicant, Mr. Lobuser, and his partners from selling this property, and we end up with a 350-unit unfriendly 40B. So I think we ought to be entertaining friendly 40Bs. I think we ought to look at them seriously. We ought to provide a pathway to yes. And what I said this earlier, and I'll say it again, the pathway to yes is under what conditions can we say yes? And what are the types of considerations, you living here, you working with us, people knowing you, can we work on to make minor adjustments, minor tweaks that may have huge benefit to the community overall on its affordability numbers for the state, to fend off and give us a shield against unfriendly 40Bs, but also, you know, just minor things that, you know, 12 more feet on a setback is gonna help us for these reasons.
Right.
Right, so we don't know what those are yet until you meet with the other boards, and as you talked about, that would be the next step. Yeah, I
You know,
would,
and the other thing that's really unique about this project is that in a lot of smaller towns that, you know, are abutting us, they 10 years ago, they were trying to all come up with this, you know, kind of cutesy zoning where we had mixed-use buildings. And we had retail on the first floor and apartments and condos on the second floor. And when developers started to build those, the apartments and condos got filled, but all the space underneath stayed black. And this is a really cool project because we have so many acres here, and our commercial, you know, on Industrial Way, it's designed perfectly for the rest, you know, doing 3 or 4 more industrial buildings. So to me, this is a mixed-use project, like, to the nth degree. It's not getting a couple little retail stores that go in and out of business every 6 months. We're gonna end up building, you know, some large flex buildings there that are gonna, you know, be exactly what's already up on Industrial Way, which they're 100% occupied, and they're always occupied because they're just the kind of building, they're not office buildings, they're really more blue-collar buildings that, you know, with tightening up zoning, it's forcing people that are gonna try to run a legitimate business into needing to rent, because you can't have, you know, you can't be an HVAC contractor or a roofer or whatever and working out of your house anymore.
I also think there's another thing that people think is a hard barrier to the unfriendly 40Bs, and that's the water.
Yep.
People view the fact that we're on restrictions as a barrier to block out unfriendly 40Bs. It's not. It's not. For anybody that thinks it is, it's not. And the reason is, as Kevin just said, if there's a pipe that goes by that building, the state's gonna tell you to improve your infrastructure.
That's right.
Dig a new well, put a new pump, do something else. But you can't use your lack of infrastructure as a barrier.
No.
So folks need to understand that if we're gonna engage and talk about friendly 40Bs, it really comes down to the alternatives. So,
Well, and I think that's what, I mean, Bill, it's funny you say about alternatives, because I've been on record for probably 15 years vehemently opposing 40Bs, because I don't agree with the legislation.
right.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't come in and tell
Yeah.
us how life's gonna be. And that's why, even though I paused, when Kevin reached out to Rick and we put it on the agenda, that was a big step, but that's how I came to even to get to this point. Because I just vehemently oppose people in Boston telling us in Milford and what to do and setting aside all of our zoning and conservation rules and everything like that. But this is something that I think will continue on. So you'll move on and get us the statistics, and then we'll
Yep.
see you again when that.
I'll reach
when
out
that
to
time
Rick and let
comes.
him know, and, you know, and then one last thing, guys, too, is that, all, up and down 495, I know you see, you know, all these huge apartment projects going all over the place. Probably 2 out of 10 of those buildings have elevators because
Wow.
of the cost. And I'm planning on putting elevators in every building, and I really want to do that because I feel like it's very important, you know, to be able to attract all residents in town, whether they're handicapped, they're older, up and down the spectrum. So all of these buildings will be really accessible.
Accessible, wow.
So I think that's a big deal. And we'll probably make, I'm not sure what the percentage would be, but probably maybe 5 to 10% of them would be fully ADA compliant as well. So, that would be whether you're blind, deaf, wheelchair. So again, I just think a bunch of the things that we can hit here are, on top of getting to the 10%, I think it's a large underserved part of the population in our area to have an adequate place to live.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. All right, next agenda item, Mr. Ronnie Pagnini, Main Street Improvement Proposal. Sorry, we've kept you a little behind schedule.
We did that so everybody would stay up. You were the teaser.
Well, hopefully, won't be too long here.
No, you take your time.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this to the agenda, and Mike and Bill.
No, Ronnie, if I can, you know what, I'm already interrupting you. I just want to say that you, because I've just been impressed since day one. I've known you off and on for a long time, but you reached out to me, I think, last November, and we had just a great conversation, and you're obviously a property owner downtown, and you've been here forever, and you love this town as much as the rest of us, if not more. And you just exuded that, and I know you reached out to my colleagues as well, but I've literally been waiting since, I think, November or December to have you here and actually have this conversation. So just wanted to acknowledge that, and I really appreciate all the time you've been putting into this. But the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, I don't know where to start. I mean, we've already had a proposal put forward,
Well, do you want to just, do you want to just, more for the viewing public,
Okay.
tell where we are or what,
Yeah.
what you've presented, or I can go through it as well. It's completely up to you, but I
Mr.
think it's
Chairman?
important. Go ahead.
Let me throw out a suggestion. You can get into the mechanics of it, but I think the thing that was compelling to me is what got you started looking at economic development in the community.
Great.
And I would start there because your observations, what you saw,
Yeah. And that's probably where I wanted to start.
where we are with the commercial tax rate and some of the barriers to, that would all be helpful, because that's a great primer to this.
Okay, so, I own some property downtown. We've had a business for many, many years downtown, a couple businesses, and I have my office downtown, and I manage properties that I own. That's what I do. So, over the years, I do my thing. I take care of my properties, a couple of them. Just recently, I had to take an awning down that was, we took advantage of it 20 years ago with the grant money, the federal grant money.
Yes.
But probably about 5 years ago, it needed to come down and be replaced, but it's not easy. Part of the issues downtown is the dual tax rate, first of all, in Milford, makes it quite a bit of a challenge for property owners, commercial property owners. I don't know if people realize that, but Milford is one of the few towns that have a dual tax rate. And, for instance, one of my main buildings, 20 years ago when I bought the property, the taxes were, say, $13,000 per year, and now they're $36,000, 18 years later. And my income and my tenant is the same. I could never really go up on their rent, and part of that's because there's very limited parking downtown, and you can only charge so much for rent. So, having that said, I do my thing with my tenants, and I try to keep my properties looking good. But recently, it's been brought to my attention by social media and a couple real estate brokers that really sparked me to do this. They mentioned about a prospective buyer coming into Milford for the first time to look at a house to buy. They drove through downtown Milford, got halfway through, stopped, banged a U-ey, and went back to where they came from. So I heard that from 2 different real estate agents, and I says, I don't know what they mean. I see downtown, first of all, being it's pretty, it's a multicultural. I feel we should embrace what we have. And there's not many vacancies downtown. So I'm saying, what are they seeing? So I got my car, started at Sacred Heart Church, and I said to myself, I'm a first time coming into Milford. What am I gonna see? So I started from Sacred Heart Church and drove to the police station. And I looked, and sure enough, I can see what probably these people saw. Rundown awnings, sign over sign, a lot of different signs in the windows, which not all the buildings, that's just a handful. I've counted about 20, 25 buildings on that stretch, including a little bit on Central Street and just a couple other side streets that are really downtown. And it's enough for somebody to say, you know, it's run down, the town is run down, but at the same time, the town is turning around with certain landlords and certain businesses. Milford Federal Savings just put, I want to say they've spent $1 million to do their facade and the inside. And it looks great. We started with the Grant Building, the Johnny Jack's Building. Recently, the Blessing Barn, or the Bethany Church, acquired the Kales Building, and they did a fabulous job. That's the one on the corner of Central and Main Street. It looks really good, and I'm getting a lot of compliments like I own the property, but I gotta give the credit to Phil McCutcheon and his wife. They did a great job with that building. And then across the street, there's a salon.
That salon is beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah, and she did a great job. And I looked inside and out, she did a fabulous job. So there are certain buildings that are, you know, people are able to put the money into, but there's a handful, well, there's 20 buildings or so that they took advantage, some of these property owners took advantage of the grant money 20 years ago and haven't done a thing since. And I don't think they're ever gonna do anything. The awnings are gonna just fall down. And part of that is the economics. You know, they're rented, the properties are rented, but you know, when you bring in a certain amount of money, you know, the numbers don't work where you can save enough to even put a new awning, or paint, a little paint, or put a new sign, or take the old sign, or even risk having their tenants take some over signage out of the windows. You know, they don't want to, they're just worried about keeping that tenant. But, so I feel, I'm asking the town, what you can do, you know, to help give back to these landlords or business property owners that just can't seem to get it done. And the way I look at it, do we want to just see these 25 buildings the way they are for the next 20 years? Or do we want to do a real good impact? You know, and I can see a real nice impact by taking care of a certain amount of properties, certain few properties downtown, where a person driving in for the first time won't have that reaction. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just, some of the things that you highlighted are not just with the private property, so, right, there, some of it is private property, some of it is town responsibility.
yeah, and a couple things like the, you know, one thing is the grates they put around the trees, which are great when they put them down, but I'd say 90% of them are all broken up, and they just don't look good. They have to just be taken away or replaced. And then the trees, pruning the trees, I think that it was finally done a year or two ago.
It was.
But that has to be ongoing. And the other two things are the entry coming into town at Sacred Heart Church is Calzone Park. That's like the, you know, that's probably one of the first things you see coming around the bend, heading downtown. I think whatever we can do to stay on that park and Draper Park. You know, fertilizing, taking care of the weeds makes a big difference. That's the two ends of downtown. So that's a couple of, otherwise, the infrastructure's been done. The sidewalks are great. They put the lanterns in, although for some reason there's water that collects in the shades. I don't know what that's all about, but otherwise, the infrastructure's been done. It looks good. Just these buildings need some TLC, and I was hoping that the town somehow could, you know, contribute to that. You know, in talking to you guys, you know, we suggested a grant, town grant, which would be divided by between the landlord and the town, the cost of doing awnings, painting, and signage. I thought that was a great idea. Now, going forward, I did have a meeting with town council, and they said that that's not an easy thing to do, but at the same time, it's not impossible. But, and that's really what I'm here for, to say, let's try to do that. Let's, if we have to get special legislation to do that, I think we should go for it. And I feel the town, you know, has the money that it won't take a lot of money to make a impact difference in that targeted area of downtown. And I'm willing to, you know, donate my time on a committee and actually oversee the whole thing, talk to all the landlords. And it's just all common sense, and they'll talk to their tenants, and they'll help them clean up the windows if they want to be part of the program. And I think you'll see a big difference. Downtown is thriving in its own way. It's, if you look, there's only a couple vacancies, but the first-time person coming into town for the first time won't see that. They'll see a depressed overall town. And I think the downtown, the image of downtown says the image relates to the image of the town itself. And that proves it with these couple.
Certainly does.
These are just two that were told to me. There could be more. But that's it.
No, I appreciate that. And again, like, and you had said that you'd spoke to all three of us, so, I mean, I turned to my colleagues and just, you know, where do we want to go here? I mean, you know, I know individually we have met with Ron, and then you two were able to make a meeting with him, so I wasn't present for that. So, do you want to start at least the history, or Mike, I mean?
If I can just interrupt with, the second part of it was the parking. Downtown, it's always been a parking issue. You know, I remember when we put the meters in downtown, it's just, people didn't want to put a dime in where they could go to the strip malls and not pay anything. So we chopped down those meters and took them out, and I actually have one. My dad bought one. You could buy them for $25 when they were getting rid of them. I've got it sitting somewhere. I wanted to take that here tonight. But, so anyway, I try to think of what kind of parking, how do we get more parking downtown? And we do have a once in a lifetime opportunity in the center of downtown, which I don't think if we don't take advantage of it, we'll never have that opportunity again. There's 3 buildings on Central Street that are, you know, they're in need of major repair. They happen to be right in a row, and they happen to be on a Central Street, which goes down where the elevation, we can really take advantage of 2-level parking. And I think that will almost double the parking that we have behind in that particular area. And that's big. I did reach out to the 2 of the owners, and the third owner, his assistant, assured me that they would be very willing to sell at a fair market price. And I know that's goes through it has to be appraised, but I feel that's an important thing to help downtown and keep it going. And then the third part of my mission statement was to try to help, when all said and done, start promoting downtown with different events, or just to change the image of a lot of people that, and how they think about downtown. I'm sorry, that's.
No, no,
No,
I
no,
think
it's a
that's
lot.
terrific, and you have spent a huge amount of time on this, and again, I know that, you know, you've talked to all of us, so I just want to make sure that my colleagues, the public hears from them too, because especially what you ended up talking about at the parking is, we can't bring anything else there if there's no place to park. I mean, that's
And here's
it's
the
the
other thing.
simpleton comment, but it's the bottom line.
And think of, eventually, maybe over the next 20 or 30 years, maybe each building will be renovated. That's more parking you need. And I don't know how that will ever happen with these 3 particular buildings, but, you know, it's, if they eventually get rehabbed, that's that much more parking you need. It's really a good opportunity where we have willing property owners to talk and listen and ready to hopefully make a deal, so.
No, I think that's fantastic. Bill, do you?
Yeah, there's a lot I could go on and on about this, but I just want to say a couple of things. Number one, we've been talking about this for much too long. Ronnie came to us as a downtown business owner. As long as there's a champion, because I think everybody knew that if we didn't create a partnership with the business owners, the residents and government, that not a lot was going to happen. Sometimes one person can make a difference, sometimes a few people involved in a committee can do that. And there's a few people I have more faith in than others. I don't know that I have more faith than anybody in Ronnie and his family's reputation, what they've been able to accomplish in Milford, the type of people they are. So that's number one. We've been talking about it too long. I don't care if we planted trees where those 3 buildings are. Those 3 buildings should go. If it's not economically viable for the business owners to do something with those, this is exactly the blight conditions where government, in working with people like yourself who are trying to do better around it, need a little help. I don't see anything that should prevent us from going forward with the type of proposal. I think there may be some dotting of some I's and some crossing of some T's that need to be done. We may need to approach town meeting to look for a local initiative. The irony of that, though, is this. The state currently can tax our residents at the local level and give back grants to its taxpayers. But if the town were to look to put a few $100,000 into its main street, we would need special legislation. Now, it's ironic, it's sad, but it's a fact. And we deal with facts and we process those and we say, okay, what prevents us from doing that in October? Well, number one, it takes leadership from this board. It takes leadership from the community and the business owners. I think we have that. So it's not just persuading town meeting. This is something we ought to go for. And frankly, I don't know that there's ever been a local initiative that, a home rule petition that's been rejected by the legislature. We came close once that I'm aware of. That one got ironed out.
That's bad form when you vote against a home rule petition.
Yeah, it's generally something legislators don't want to do, is vote against home rule petitions.
I see.
But at the same time, I do want to say this. I'm prepared to commit local funds. I have no problem with that because that business community has been donating to those local funds by way of taxes. But I also want to look at and rule out, or at least understand the mechanics behind some of the economic development grants that are available. Because we know people in Boston, we have legislators that can go work on our behalf, and we have inroads that would possibly be able to help with getting us lined up to see how we were more competitive for those grants. So I don't think we ought to exclude sources of funding other than the local tax dollar. I'm prepared to do that, but I want to explore that idea as well. Yeah, I'm in favor. You had me sold on the concept. I look at the downtown partnership. I think there may be some things we want to talk about with respect to where it begins and ends. Because there's a lot of discussion about what a downtown is and how far it goes. If we do it, and I know this is about funds, right? You want to start small. I'm okay with that. And if you insist on that, I'm in. But to exclude facades that might be on the buildings that you look at when you come out of Cedar Street.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to exclude those, as an example, right? You come out of Cedar Street, you take a left or right on Main,
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
There's facades there that need some work. I hear a lot about those, by the way. There are facades that are beyond the post office that I don't know that I want to exclude. I want to see, there's awnings on the meat market, there's awnings on and facade on the liquor store. I include those in Main Street, so let's talk about that. If it's too big for what we're talking about now, and you don't think it's fast enough, because they could become barriers, right? If we add too much, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's my estimates and the dollar amount that we talked about really covers that focused area of roughly 25 buildings. I think if we can prove, let's make this a real downtown.
Okay.
And I say downtown districts from Sacred Heart Church to the police station. And then Central Street's the center, and Exchange Street. And then right where 89 Main, the Rosenfeld, the old Rosenfeld, that's sort of a prominent building. That's a little side street there. And then there's Lily's, which you see coming down Spruce Street and School Street.
Right.
I'd say that's part of downtown, and boy, what a difference with a nice paint job. It's such an eyesore, and it's never gonna get done, I don't believe.
Right.
For a long time, so I would like to include a couple buildings that I consider downtown.
Okay,
And then if this is successful, why not
expand it.
go from there to the
Okay.
next project?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good focus.
I'm flexible.
Mike?
I'd like, Ronnie, first of all, say thank you. We met before, great job. I'll back you up a little bit. I'll say I'm a stranger coming to the town of Milford, and I come off of 109. And I take a right, now I'm heading into Milford Center. You've got the old Kmart Plaza now under renovation. Another building going in there. You got Kohl's across the street. They do a great job of keeping their plaza clean. You got the bank building, Kevin's Bank Building, immaculate.
Yep.
So that stretch of road all the way down. Now you come to the intersection of 16 and 109. You've got Kevin across the street building a new Hyundai dealership.
Yep.
Some properties, I believe, going across the street. So really nice. Now you come down, you get to the traffic light of 85 and Route 16. You got that old empty Gibbs gas light. That's the first thing that sets me off every morning on my way to work. But now I say the reverse. Now I get off into Milford on 85.
Yep.
So I come into the intersection of Wendy's, I go through there, I go by two very nice cemeteries, and the first traffic light I come to, what's on my left-hand side? That empty lot that's been for sale, had a pile of dirt, so those are things that I agree with you, that really, truly do need to be worked on. Then we come up into Sacred Heart, and I give you a lot of credit for, there's an old saying, if you're, and I may gonna screw this up, if you don't wanna be part of the solving the problem, you are the problem. And I commend you for taking the time out of your busy life to put this proposal together for us to go around, talk to people, snap the pictures, do the investigative work. It shows that you really do, you're committed to this town, as everybody that lives and pays taxes in this town should be, So I truly would love to see you succeed, and I'm with Bill. You've got my support 100%, and anything I can do to help you,
It's great.
please.
Thank you.
All right?
Well, I think that solidifies the fact that you certainly have unanimous support. I think we need to, again, I've been saying this a lot tonight, but, all the things we've talked about tonight, Ronnie, and you're kind of summing it up, these are the quality of life issues that we've been talking about the last couple of months. If we're gonna retain people here, or attract people here, or continue to raise the next generation of kids here, this is the stuff that we have to concentrate on. And again, you stepped up. I know that, I think, we gotta give you a group to work with, or you gotta recommend us a group to work with, because you shouldn't want to do it all by yourself. So hopefully, whether you want to talk about that tonight, or you want to talk about that at a later time, that's up to you. I think while you're here, I know, I had hoped you were gonna be here on an hour ago, but we did a lot of talking tonight. But I'm glad you stuck around, and where do you want to go next? Because I know we had talked briefly about just getting your group on board and
Right, so
moving forward.
I don't know what the next, I think getting some kind of approval of this, the funds, but if you can let me have a task force committee of, say, 5, and I've got Mr. Josh Leoch is willing to put the time in. He's a downtown real estate agent.
Nice
and
job
he's-
with your building,
He's
by the way.
invested, he did a great job with his building. I'm sorry, I didn't mention your building, that was, he put a lot of money. Great job, if you go inside, it's even better, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have my brother-in-law, Paul, who's a landlord downtown also, and that's what he does for a profession, is oversees real estate for TNT Corporation in Boston, and very knowledgeable, and he's loves the town and wants to put the time and energy in. And then we have also Tony Pinto, who is willing to put the time and energy. He knows the real estate market, commercial especially. And also my brother-in-law, Peter Moynihan, who's retired from Bose, and also a property owner downtown, will be willing to put his expertise and time into it. And that's sort of like a 5-member. We can keep a couple spots open if there's other people that want to get involved, but I feel we can keep it controlled.
Yeah, keep it small.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to think, I want to see some affirmative action. I know this board does. Mr. Pagnini's done a great deal of work. I'd like to make a motion, and the motion is that the Board of Selectmen form an ad hoc committee for downtown revitalization. We'll be starting small, some of these ideas, and that we look for this committee to bring forward funding initiatives, proposals, and through their guidance, through their recommendations, we'll take the appropriate actions at town meeting, try to be persuasive, to look for sources of funding, and look for grant money. So, again, the motion is that we create an ad hoc committee for downtown economic revitalization, and that within that committee, we name Ron Pagnini as chair, and we initially appoint Josh Leoch, Paul Melnati, Tony Pinto, and Peter Moynihan. That would be my motion.
I'll second.
That's unanimous.
We're on our way.
This is great.
Sometimes it starts this way, and then we're going to look back, I think, and hopefully 3 years from now, say, wow.
Yeah, what a difference. Good. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you
Looking
very
forward
much,
to it.
Ron.
Thank you, Ronnie.
So we've got to formulate some strategies, suggest you guys get together, and we ought to talk about the funding, that type of thing.
Sounds good.
What the real numbers are, and
Yeah.
And we'll also find out on our end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
About about town meeting, about legislative action, anything like that. That's something that we
working
can
on
put on
that part of
agenda,
it.
and with Rick, and Jerry Moody, our town council, can hopefully point us in the right direction.
Okay,
And
great.
I'll encourage everyone to do that quickly, because you've been moving quickly, and we don't want to lose momentum.
No, in the meantime, I'll be tackling, looking at some buildings, the buildings that need work, and coming up with some rough ideas and try to narrow the cost down a little bit better, too.
That's great.
good.
Ron, thank you again, and have a good night. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Next agenda item is the town administrator's report. Rick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A number of items tonight. One, I have been informed by Representative Murray that he has included in the House budget the sum of $50,000 for the Milford Police and JAG Regional Opioid Task Force Initiative. and hopefully that will make its way to the Senate, and I know Senator Fatman also will be a strong advocate on our behalf. In conjunction with that, I'm pleased to report that the town of Hopedale has informed me that they will be including an article on their May town meeting warrant to approve the sum of $5,000 also for the Regional Task Force Initiative, and they will join Milford and any other town who's interested to help fight this most serious problem.
Great.
This amount represents what we had talked about, $1 roughly per resident, and they're very confident that they will be joining us shortly in this initiative. Just numbers on the Chapter 90 program, I think they've already been out, but I've been informed again by State Representative Brian Murray that the 10th Worcester District will receive $1.6 million in funding assistance for local expenses under the state's Chapter 90 program. This money was included in part of a $200 million bond authorization approved unanimously by the House of Representatives and signed by the governor. Milford will receive the sum of $823,130.92. I just want to briefly thank everyone who turned out for the third annual cleanup day on Saturday, April 29th. It was truly great to see so many people involved in getting together to help improve the look of our town. Brief update on the MS4 appeal. I've been informed that the U.S. Court of Appeals has issued an order to hold the briefing schedule in abeyance for 90 days. The reason is that New Hampshire has also filed an appeal of the New Hampshire MS4 permit, and their statutory deadline has not yet elapsed. Once that deadline does elapse, it is expected the appeals will be consolidated for one hearing. And then finally, I did provide to the board tonight a letter from Scott Crisafulli, Chairman of the Transportation Advisory Committee. The committee is looking for authorization to spend money received via donation. Specifically, they're seeking authorization to spend up to $100 to set up a booth at the Celebrate Milford Day coming up in a few weeks, and then spend another $882 to place an ad with the bus route in the town crier. So they were just looking for the board's vote and authority to expend those funds in that, so that committee can proceed with those two initiatives.
I'd move with that.
And that's all I have. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's
No,
all
I'd
I
like to
have.
make a motion to support that.
Second?
I have two vote in favor, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick.
Good news.
Let's see, old business. First one, town administrator regarding the annual town meeting warrant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Last meeting, the board did take up a number of articles. There were a few that the board did not take up, and that there was not a full board, I believe, at the time. I believe the ones the board did not take up were Article 4, 14, 15, 16, 28, and 36. So I've included the warrant again, the listing of the articles, and a brief summary, should the board wish to take up all or any of those
What's the pleasure of the board?
articles.
Rick, could you go over those again? I have 4 and 36, and what was in between?
Okay, Article, might be nice if I say what they are, right?
No, that's all right. You
Article
give me the
4
number.
is the budget. Article 14 is under the Modernization Act, the payment of taxes would be conditional upon receiving a license and/or permit. We wouldn't have to wait the 1 year. Articles 15 and 16, if you remember, dealt with reduced statutory speed limits on town-owned roads. One would reduce, the town would be able to reduce to establish a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. The other we would be able to set speed limits in what we would call safety zones. And 28 would amend the veterans' residency requirement. It would just reduce it from 5 years to 1 year so that a veteran could get the veterans' real estate tax exemption. And 36,
It's a legislation for water commissioners.
yes, thank you. That was 36, yes.
Okay. So I don't want to just bunch these together, Mr. Chairman. I know it takes a few more minutes, but what I'd like to do is put motions on a few groups. I'd like to first make a motion for the water company special legislation to appoint water commissioners. The purpose of this article in town meeting is, should any future action be voted favorably by town meeting, and if the town were to become the owner of the Milford Water Company, this article would need to be put in place to allow, on day +1, to allow the community to have water commissioners so that the Board of Selectmen are not only Board of Selectmen, but preventing them from being named water commissioners on the same day. So we would need to have in place the ability to appoint until there was an election for water commissioners in the same way there are sewer commissioners. And we need to have that in place ahead of time. So that's the mechanics there. So I would vote favorable on Article 36. I wanted to spend a few minutes on it, and that's, I appreciate you indulging me so that people understood. It's to allow the board to appoint water commissioners until an election can be held.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous.
I'd like to bunch the reduce the statutory speed limit from the Municipal Modernization Act, and specifically Articles 15 and 16 allows the local control of setting of speed limits. I'd like to recommend favorable on those.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
I'm in favor as well, so that's unanimous.
Veterans residency requirements, from moving it from 5 to 1 year. I think it's veteran-friendly, and Milford's always been veteran-friendly. So I'd make a motion to recommend favorable on that.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous.
14, the ability to withhold permits if taxes were too far in the rear. That's at the discretion, it's not a requirement, but it's at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen under the Municipal Modernization Act. I'd recommend that we adopt that as well.
Second that one.
I'll vote in favor as well, so that's unanimous.
And lastly, the one that Zach's been waiting for. Part of the requirement, and Zach, I don't know if you wanted to,
I actually wanted Zach and Chris Moran both to come up
Okay.
since they're both here.
because this shouldn't be just a casual thing. We're talking about the adoption of a balanced budget.
Absolutely.
And we have memos in
And
front
not
of us.
that everyone doesn't know, Chris Moran's Chair of the Finance Committee, Zach Taylor's our Finance Director.
Thank you, gentlemen. So just an update, I was here a couple weeks ago to give a presentation. You were not here, so we didn't take action. And also, we had some ironing out to do, and we appear to still have a little bit, but I feel at the next Finance Committee meeting, I'm hoping that we kind of get to a concluded Article 4 at this time. Overall, we seem to be a little over-projected. Than projected, I should say, which does seem to impact some of our goals and objectives as I see it at this time. Due to circumstance, it's largely has to do with the operational budget. And at this time, it really seems to be the school department that there's not a concession between the Finance Committee and the school department at their current budget. They seem to be off by 1%. School committee had submitted at 4.9. Finance subcommittee would rather see them at 3.9, so there's currently a proposal to say, hey, let's split it. And at this time, that makes sense to me. I think they can move forward with that budget, and it won't be devastating on either side. And also, we provided a funding schedule, because at the annual town meeting, it's not just the operational budget, although it is the largest impact. We have a number of monetary articles on there as well. And as you see outlined, we do have a decent balance of free cash, in which we do plan on utilizing the majority, if not all of it, which is fine. As 6:30 will come and go, I will recertify free cash. So that's where we're at right now. Overall, it's not devastating, as I started off to say, but I think we can do a little bit better, and that's where we're at right now.
So, Mr. Chairman, that would beg a question. We can just keep looking at this meeting to meeting, which is fine by me, by the way. That's a method that can work. And if we have to, and probably should anyway, if this goes to the 12th hour, we call a meeting for 7 o'clock the night of the meeting, see
Which we've
where
done
we
in the
are,
past.
which we've done in the past as well.
Yeah, because that was the conversation, and gentlemen, jump in here. At our last meeting, last Friday, the financial team we were going to, there were a couple options. We either vote for the budget, including the larger number with the school department, knowing that that might change at the FinCom discussions, or obviously vote something else, but all we have is what is in front of us at this point. And I think it would probably be bad form to, we have a school committee member on the board as well, but I think it would be bad form for us to vote a different number when you haven't finished your negotiations with. So if, and Chris, I do want you to jump in here. because
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman,
it's-
and I appreciate that very much, and I'm glad as we spoke on Friday, because the FinCom subcommittee and the school committee have been working very hard at this. It's a very complex budget, it's a big number, and it's something that, as Zach says, it has a severe impact on the town, as you see on the balance sheet there. Besides the other factors that we've had between the additional employees at the highway department, additional employees at the parks department, and then obviously the police situation as well. So, we've had a lot of things affect the budget as of late, and that's why a lot of things have been evolving with Article 4. Of course, we always like to get Article 4 done earlier than this. I'm hoping that at our Wednesday meeting, I got fingers and toes crossed and everything else, and that's why I've pushed Article 4 off, because we are really trying very hard to work with the schools. I think both sides are working very hard, and they're doing a great job. We just got to nail it down, and I really, in my heart, I really think we're close. I think we can do it, because we all love Milford, and I don't think anyone begrudges anyone for wanting something for their committee. Whether we want to be more financially conservative, the school wants to be able to provide great education to the students. But we have to meet a middle ground, and I really think that we don't want to have to take this up at the town meeting and, as they say, have a battle on town meeting floors, they would say. We want to work it out, and in my heart, I really think we can do it. And I know that a lot of the school committee members hope that we can do it as well, and if you do have to have a last-minute meeting and approve Article 4, I'm hoping that I will be able to give you a compromising number and an acceptance of it.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So so do either of you have an issue with us putting off Article 4? None of us mind getting here a half an hour early and having a vote and following up with you. Obviously, I was going to go ahead with the larger number at that point when we left on Friday, but I certainly, Bill brought up a great point. We're always here half an hour early anyway, and it's not about that. It's our responsibility.
If you guys don't mind, I don't want to speak for Zach.
Not in the least. I guess the only thing popping in my mind is that you do have to have a report out. And,
Well, we will have a report out with what our recommendation is.
yeah, you're
and then
right.
the selectmen
You're right.
can
Correct.
make their,
point.
either
Yes.
recommendation favorable or unfavorable, or Article 4.
Yeah, because the number you guys might come up with isn't in your report or what the school committee we've seen at this point. It could be something in the middle.
That's correct. So
That's the goal anyway.
So just the report that I send out 2 weeks prior would just have our recommendation of what number would be in there and accepting whatever budget we hopefully compromise to.
And then
on
that's
Wednesday.
explained on the floor during
Exactly.
your report and everything.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So should we just put Article 4 off and have that meeting posted?
We'll post the
night
meeting,
before?
yep.
All right, great. Zach, is there anything else or that we want, I could sit here and read your whole letter because there's a whole lot of good stuff in that. Do we want to touch on the amount we're giving to we're putting towards stabilization, the amount for taxpayer relief
Yeah,
at
I'll
this
go
point?
into, I'll go into
or-
a little bit. Also, as part of our, as you know, as part of our financial team meeting, it wasn't just talking about the operational budget. It wasn't just talking about what's appearing at the annual town meeting. It was very much geared towards being able to meet the goals and objectives that we had set out months ago for the town, which really get realized at the October special town meeting. So when you see the charts in front of you, it's also earmarking funds to be able to achieve said goals. And just to kind of highlight some of them, one which we will be achieving right now is to clear the snow and ice deficit, which is fantastic. 2 is to set aside about $3.2 million in designed excess levy capacity in order to control the tax rate. 3, to be able to continue to contribute to stabilization, to be able to take on significant capital needs and potentially one of the events that we talked about earlier today. And 4, to continue to set aside at the raise and appropriate level, $1.5 million of capital. Now, there is capital that does appear on this annual town meeting, and we'll keep that into consideration as we move through. But when looking at the capital plan, we've done a lot of work over the year with that, and I feel like it's a sufficient figure to be able to even meet those objectives as well. So right now, kind of the premise of that memo that I put in front of you guys today was that the way the operational budget turns out, it may make it a little difficult to achieve all of those goals. But again, right now, I'm not making any promises to free cash, as there's still months to come before it closes. I don't know. It's very well could still be achievable, just at this time, it makes it a little more difficult. So,
There's room
again,
to move if need
absolutely,
be.
nothing devastating. It's still, we're in the right direction.
Right. Mike, any questions, comments?
You do a great job.
No, great job, great memo, too.
Thank you.
Chris, Zach, anything else from your end?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Not at this time.
No, I'd be interested to see what the results come in. Hopefully, there's good compromise to get to that final number, and we're ready to go.
I'm hoping so too, and I'm just as confident as Chris is.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Nice job.
patience, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. The next item on the agenda under old business is regarding a possible referendum on the marijuana, I guess, overall referendum that we're dealing with. So the three of us, I just want to mention for those who maybe didn't catch the articles in the paper, but it depicted well that all three of us showed up at the planning board meeting and voiced some of our concerns and questions and comments, as well as a number of folks from the general public. One of the aspects of the statewide referendum was allowing towns to more or less opt out. And if they wanted to opt out, it would have to be by voice of the voters. So we would have to have a referendum, which we would decide when to have it, but first we have to decide as a board whether we want to have one. I obviously expressed in favor of doing such a thing, as did both of my colleagues. But this is now the formal environment to have that discussion in. I think that even though there's been some debate and discussion during, in social media and everything, that, the will of the people was already decided. But we've seen when other decisions have been made, some people support something, statewide or more globally, but then decide that we don't necessarily want such businesses in our own town, especially as we saw tonight. We're, dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff, and at the same time trying to do, I hope, a lot of good stuff. And what I personally would like is to have the voters of Milford actually decide whether they think this is a good idea or not, to support retail sales of marijuana. With that, I'll turn it over to the board. Bill?
Yeah, during the entire reelection campaign, I had said that we were one vote shy of understanding what the local standard was within our community. We're missing one vote, and through the wisdom of that referendum, the authors of that referendum created a process by which members of the Board of Selectmen, planning boards, zoning boards of appeals could understand what their community, how their community feels about things within their town boundaries. So whether folks know it or not, if they voted in favor of that referendum, the statewide initiative, they also voted for a community to get a sense in the will of the voters within the local community to see if they wanted to opt out. Now, opt out isn't necessarily the words that I would choose. I view it as a referendum to understand where the voters are. The opt-out clause is language used by the referendum authors. When we look at states like Colorado, they actually did it in reverse. They had opt-in clauses. We could just as easily be taking an opt-in vote or have that discussion. But through the legislation, through the referendum, the language left to this board was to sense the public by asking them if they want to opt out. Other communities have done it within Massachusetts. So I would be in favor of taking that vote and as soon as reasonably possible so that we can craft better language for zoning and controls. There's still discussion to be had on a variety of other things, but I think this is the start of what we should be doing, and it's what I committed to when I was running.
Well said, Bill, I appreciate that. Mike?
Just to echo the comments, well, I mean, the night we were, as you said, before the planning board, all three of us expressed our feelings and where we stood. And if, going for the referendum is the way that we get the answers from the voters of the town of Milford, then I fully support it.
No,
And for anybody that's interested in what the will of the people are and understanding the will of the people, that approval of that referendum gave every community this clause. That is the will of the people. And to understand what the will of the people is within the community in the end will help these boards dramatically. Because boards right now are trying to set local standards. And they do it without a barometer, because this is like the opening of the frontier in the West. It's all new frontier. Nobody has an idea of where to go and what to do. So boards are trying to navigate through that process, trying to give the community what they want without great guidance on a specific question. What do you want within your community, within the town boundaries?
No, I think that's a great point, too, because, again, trying to follow the social media, at that point seemed to be lost. So I think that's great that you've explained that so clearly, that supporting a referendum in town is.
I mean, supporting all of it.
Supporting all of it.
All
so-
of its components and all of the options available.
No, I think that's important. So I guess what we need to decide is, do we want to start talking about when we would like to have a referendum? I mean, obviously, that has been clearly supported here by the three of us. So, do we want to think about that and have a further discussion in a couple of weeks? Or do we want to, start talking about, the one
Yeah,
thing,
it's a
the
good
reason I
question.
asked that is because
It's a great question.
the legislature has said that they will not act any earlier than April 1st of 2018.
Right.
The only problem with us is if they decide to act on April 1st, we don't have our town election until after April 1st.
First Tuesday in April.
The first Tuesday in April, whatever that is, even if it is the first.
We couldn't set up the ballots anyway.
We couldn't set everything up.
Couldn't do the
So
mechanics.
that kind of forces us, obviously, to hold a separate election for the referendum prior to April 1st. Now, whether we think we should do it this fall or winter, next spring, but prior to April 1st.
Do you think we should get Amy's buy-in on it, being the town clerk?
It's really actually up to us. We have a budget for an election. If we have to augment that budget with another, we can do that in October. Even if we were to expend the April funds earlier than that. What we'd have to do is, obviously, in fairness to the town clerk and the ability of the town clerk to hold elections, but we may find ourselves in a unique situation come next April where we're going to defer for a month what the annual election does. We may find ourselves in that situation, depending on what the state comes out with.
Well, that's why, do we want to put Amy on the next agenda, invite her to the meeting and say, we have to do it before next April vacation. No, I'm sorry, April election. So is it best to do it in the fall or earlier in the spring, or technically the winter?
Well, I think that answer lies with us.
Oh, no, it technically, and by law, is our responsibility.
No, it's a political decision. It's elected officials. It's, to me, I have no question about when I want it to be.
When was that?
So I'd be prepared to
I'm just
make a
putting you on the
motion.
spot,
Yeah,
so-
no. I'd be prepared to make a motion that says we look for our earliest opportunity within September, but we need to consult with Amy. And I'd also like to consult with other people, town administrator and others, within the month of September to see when the timing would be best in September. Right? There's a window in September that's sweeter than others.
might be going on,
There's some
yes.
other things. There's holidays on the front end. On the back end, there's some challenges, so.
And I can confer with Amy, I can confer with town council.
But what I'd like to put a motion out forward to have it determined so that people see a clear direction from this board is to say, yes, we're shooting for September. We're gonna be working with the town clerk, town administrator, and others to see when the best day within September is. If I can get a second, right, so,
With that, yeah,
okay.
yeah, you second it.
Great.
All right.
I'll vote in favor of this, so that's unanimous.
So they know it's our intention to vote to opt out if the community, to have a referendum to opt out. It's sometime in September, and we'll work to set the date. At least they see a clear signal from us.
Okay. All right, thank you, Rick. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving on to new business. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if we could please work towards getting electronic with our meeting packets. I don't know how Mr. Buckley feels on that, but
Oh, I'd
this
be
is
in.
this is an awful lot.
I work electronically most of my day, so I'm happy to try that. There are.
We're growing up, Mike.
But there are gonna be times when you just can't put a plot
no,
plan
no.
on a 10-inch monitor.
Understandable.
What we should look at are what are the options, and for, I don't know, 14-inch monitors would be nice. That's all I can tell you. Because I've worked with smaller monitors and they're too small. For you guys that have perfect eyesight.
It'd just be such a savings.
I think it would. Paper savings.
Yeah.
You look-
I've asked Andy to start, kind of
Start,
anticipate
okay.
you guys might.
Because I
go
know
there.
Mike actually brought it up that the FinCom obviously have their tablets, so,
Yep.
however, it's,
Yeah, even if we borrow theirs,
Well, it was set up for everybody to be able to use
Yeah.
those with password
and
opportunities,
then
so they're there to
those
be
point
used.
Something that has to be on bigger, in school committee, we get some stuff, very little, but we do still get some stuff.
You
on
have
paper.
to, yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
I don't know how you can avoid
Right.
100%, right, right. Okay, we'll definitely look into that, come up with some ideas for the board to consider,
Thank you.
given what we just discussed, yeah.
all right, that's great. All right, thank you, Mike.
It's, was that under new business?
Yes, that was new business.
That was new. Well, before we get into the rest of new business, if we're gonna jump the line.
Yeah, does anyone else have any new business
I do-
before
I
we get
do
to
have
the old new
something.
business?
I'd like the board to discuss on a future agenda item in the very near future, policies as it relates to claims against the town. And I think we have to develop a policy that gives our legal counsel some guidance and parameters, and still provides the notification to this board that we'd seek to understand when those claims are paid and up to a certain dollar limit.
Okay.
So, Rick,
You
if
want to do
there
that
are.
in June, or?
Yeah, June would be fine. If there are any benchmark examples out there from town administrators, I'd be happy to look at those. I'm not trying to set new ground here, but I noticed that we are absent that policy. And the irony of that is that no one individual on this board can sign to release hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in the absence of a policy for counsel on claims, that could be possible. So I'm just suggesting we put parameters around that and notification requirements. All right.
Okay. Any new business?
New?
All right. So the next agenda item is the Sacred Heart Parish looking for a one-day license for a fundraiser. The applicant is Father Richard Scioli. It's for June 14th at the Bell Tower Room, which is the parish hall, from 6 to 10 p.m.
It's wine. Move.
Second?
That's unanimous. Next is from the Veterans Department for a parade permit to obstruct.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Unanimous.
Memorial Day.
Next is American Legion Auxiliary permit to obstruct. Distribute poppies at Oliva's Hickey Liquors and the post office on May 25th,
Move, Mr.
26th,
Chairman.
27th, 28th, 29th, from 9 to 6. Yeah, it's unanimous. Next is St. Mary's of the Assumption Church for the permit to obstruct. Father Mateus having a religious procession in honor of Our Lady of Fatima on
May 12th,
May 12th at 7 PM.
And their instruction is Winter Street, Granite Street, Sumner Street. Okay. Move to approve?
Second?
Unanimous. Next, permit to obstruct Winter Street between Tedeschi's and Main Street and Granite Street, June 3rd from 5 PM to midnight. This is, we are planning to have a festival on the street. We need to obstruct the street to make it possible.
Yeah, it's more like a, in this case, a
Street festival?
Yeah, a street festival and block party all combined. I think it's a perfect street. Later in the afternoon, I'd vote in favor of that, Mr. Chairman.
That's unanimous. Next one is for St. Mary's Assumption Parish fundraising for the parish's restoration, and that is on May 13th from 6 PM to 12 AM. It's an application for a one-day license.
Okay, I'll move to approve.
Second that?
That's unanimous.
June 3rd. Yeah.
The next is for, that was May 13th. This one is application for a one-day license for June 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Between the hours of 5 and 12, and this is the Brazilian Country Festival, which is a fundraiser for the parish as well.
I'll move to approve.
That's unanimous. Okay, next we have Breaking AIDS Ride, which is looking for a permit to obstruct.
This is not until September 8th, right?
Yes, I'm trying to get, yep, September 8th from 8:30 AM to 10:30 AM.
You know, without sounding like I'm against fundraising for AIDS, and this is an attempt to notify the police chief as well. Rick,
Coming through.
yeah, why don't, can we just get them to electronically fill out our form, just so that, 'cause it's hard to tell whether it has all the components.
Okay.
And it needs police department support in order to be able to help at intersections that are key in certain times of the day.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's very,
They did run it through the police chief. At the bottom of your packet, there's just a little memo from him.
Oh, Rick.
oh, okay. Yeah, because I saw that it said we were notifying the chief. I missed that the annual event is well ran.
It's kind of tucked in the back.
Informed us each step of the way in preparing. Okay, so it has what I need. I would encourage future ones
sure.
to be on our forms.
Yep.
It's just the way we're used to looking at them, and I don't want to be bureaucratic in the process, but sometimes it's easier.
You can notify them, sure.
I would second that.
That's unanimous. Next is a permit to obstruct for the Hospitality and Tourism Management Program at Milford High School. The students are writing on behalf of the program at Milford High School. They are planning to have their third annual color run for Stacy Middle School on the morning of October 14th, 2017. We have the same route as previous 2 years, which goes down Congress Street past the high school, down Highland, West Street, and back to Stacy. We are aware of what needs to happen for this event, including getting police presence.
And this one, the chief signed.
Yes.
Okay. I'd move to approve.
Second?
And that's unanimous.
Again, Rick. One for,
Yeah.
thank you.
Next is, any other new business? I know we think we covered
Versus
that.
the new one?
Exactly. The first item of correspondence is a letter of resignation from Christopher Wilson from the Milford Cultural Council.
Yeah, I'd move with regret to accept that resignation and thank him for his work.
Second that?
And I'll vote in favor as well. Now, Chris is very involved and now he's the new member of the community use. Next, we have our double poll report. I don't know if anyone wants to take any action on this. I
any
know,
other
Rick,
night
you
I
told
would.
me 4 went in and,
3, no, actually, 4 were removed, 3 were set due to either a motor vehicle accident or
Okay.
a particular customer request, so they're working in it, yeah.
Yeah, we need to start talking about these 2010 polls. So we get an update on just the most aged.
okay, Rick, can we do that? Just figure out what the status is on at least the
Doesn't,
polls
at
that
this
we're
rate, it doesn't
going
look like
back to.
Camp Street is ever gonna get their polls.
Why would you say that?
Just looking at that report.
7 years old?
We take away 4, we add 3, and Camp Street's not getting theirs, 7 years old now.
Next, we actually have another letter of resignation. This is from our Assistant Town Accountant, Wendell Phillips. His last day of work will be July 21st. Rick, how long has Wendell worked for the town of Milford now? Quite 4 or 5 years?
Since
No.
Zach's been the accountant, he's stepped in.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember how long it's been,
Before
but
I
know-
got here, I've
I
been
know
here
Wen-
4, so it's gotta
Okay.
be more than 4, actually.
Okay, no, Wendell's done a lot of work.
Sorry to see him go.
And that's what I've heard from different folks here at Town Hall and from different departments, so, but he's moving on and taking on a new adventure, so I wish him the best of luck. Is there a motion?
Yeah, regrettably, again, I move to approve that and thank him for his service to the community.
Second, he's a fine young man, comes from a very, very
Good
nice
family.
family. He will be greatly missed. Absolutely.
I too vote to accept with regret. That's unanimous. That is the end of all of our public agenda items. Now I'll need a motion to go into executive session so we can discuss negotiations with the water company, with town council, for a claim, with town council contract, with police civil service, and with the fire chief's contract and collective bargaining for the highway department.
That means 12 o'clock. I'll move that we go into executive session to discuss the matters listed.
I too vote in favor. Can we have a roll call?
Aye?
Aye.
I too vote in favor. That's unanimous. Thank you and good night. We will not be returning to regular session.